What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to introduce you all to Montauk and Camp Hero, ritual abuse, mind control, human experimentation, and organized abuse survivor, whistleblower, and overcomer, former Camp Hero employee, loving father, biking, hiking, and outdoor lover, former actor, humanitarian, and passionate purveyor of truth, Joe Loffreno. For many years of his life, Joe was the steadfast steward of Camp Hero State Park, a wild, windswept stretch at the eastern edge of Long Island, where craggy cliffs meet the restless Atlantic. This abandoned military base, with its looming Cold War era radar tower and whispered ties to Stranger Things, is more than just a workplace for Joe. It's the epicenter of his life, his memories, and his nightmares. Quote, "It's a place that's dominated my life," he's confessed, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent unraveling its mysteries. A Montauk native, Joe's walked the park's eerie trails and sealed World War II gunnery tunnels, knowing its secrets better than most. But it's his own story that sets him apart. A chilling discovery that he was one of the Montauk boys, abducted as a child during the 80s. It was under hypnosis that he would have vivid memories flood back, a stranger luring him into the base, men in civilian clothes leading him to a sunken house, and an underground lab where he lay on a table, wires snaking from his body like a science experiment gone wrong. They analyzed us like animals, he recalls, haunted by visions of up to 50 other kids, some of whom he believes met darker fates than him. It was a very dark, very evil thing. Despite the skepticism he's received surrounding the truth around Camp Hero, Joe's conviction is unshakable. He's no eccentric recluse. He's a grounded former Parks employee, a friend to locals, a man of integrity and conviction, and a loving father with strong bonds to his children. His discovery with another employee of remnants matching his hypnotic visions only fuels his resolve. Quote, "If I could dig, I'd find cement structures down there," he's insisted while pointing to a spot he's certain holds answers. For those of you who have been listening to and following along to this podcast and other podcasts featuring survivors of governmental mind control programming and human experimentation projects, Montauk is a location many of you have heard time and time again. Some survivors still believe experimentation on children is still taking place there to this day underneath the ruins of what was once an operational military base. Today, we are going to find out and learn more puzzle pieces to the Camp Hero puzzle from a man whose personal experiences at Montauk, both as an unwitting child and as an adult employee of the park itself, are invaluable to the questions we all still have. Joe doesn't do many interviews, so it's an absolute honor, privilege, and blessing we get to hear from and learn from him today. If you could all do me a big favor and please put away whatever you're doing and give him your full attention. Joe's story is a testament to resilience, a man confronting his past, shrouded in mystery, while safeguarding a place that draws Stranger Things fans and truth seekers alike. Camp Hero, with its rustling 90-foot radar tower and abandoned bunkers, is Long Island's own Area 51, a vortex of intrigue where history and conspiracy collide. And Joe stands at its heart, a guardian of its secrets, driven by a quest for truth and a refusal to let the shadows of his childhood define him. Joe's journey inspires us to face the unknown with courage, to seek answers no matter how unsettling, and to find strength in the stories that shape us. Before wrapping up the introduction of today's guest, I'd like to share just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, if you wanted to share any information privately with me, or if you are interested in submitting a written testimony to be featured in a Substack article, please reach out to me via email at imaginabetterworld2020@gmail.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. I've also started up a new YouTube channel recently, and you can subscribe to me there at the handle at Imagination Podcast Official that I am now streaming new episode premieres from weekly. Turn on your notifications and join our loving community in the live chats every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Central Time. Thank you all on the other side of the screen wholeheartedly for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. Your support means the absolute world to me and to every single guest on the show. So, you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, walking miracle, survivor and warrior, anti-child abuse advocate, and a courageous whistleblower here to shine a light on the darkness, the one, the only, Joe Loffreno. Joe, it's an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I don't know if I deserve all of it, but thank you. That was very nice of you. Everything you said was pretty much spot on.
You're absolutely welcome. I'm really grateful that you're on here. As I mentioned, it's been years since you've done an interview, and even back then, you didn't do a ton of them. So it's a rare gift that we get to hear you talk, and I'm really, really, really grateful and honored to have you on today. You have quite a story, both as an insider from your childhood as well as actually being a native to Montauk. And I think your story is truly unique and can offer some really much needed perspective on some of the questions people have on this story. So I'm just really grateful that you're here and to get to share that with people, especially survivors on the other end, who may believe that they were victims as well to some of what you went through. As and researchers and therapists and people like me who collaborate and work with survivors, and want to be here to help. This is a really big part of the puzzle. So if it's okay with you, I thought we'd start being a local there. There's a lot of history to Montauk that isn't always included in the testimonies of people who were there as children or in literature. And I thought maybe if you could talk about some of the history, good, bad, or otherwise, of Montauk, of Camp Hero, and just some important things maybe that you think would be valuable for people to know who listen to testimonies like yours of people who were there.
Okay. Well, as you said, I live in Montauk. My family moved out here back in 1972, so it's been a really long time. I went to school here till third grade, moved down to Florida with my family for the winters, and many years, maybe 30 years ago now, got married, had kids. Anyway, moved back to Montauk permanently. So I've been back here as a permanent resident through the summers and winters for about 30 years now. Um, Montauk used to be a fishing community and surfing on the side. Then it turned into both. And lately, maybe for the last 10 years or so, we've turned into more of a party town than anything else. It's everybody comes out from the city, like 95% of our population out here, which goes into the 100 and something thousand people in the summertime, from about 2,000 people in the wintertime. So it's a giant boost. They're all from Manhattan. The rest, we have some Connecticut people, a little bit Pennsylvania and Jersey, but the majority are all Manhattan. We have this year was the youngest crowd year ever that I can remember. There were 20 somethings. The year before that was 30 somethings. The year before that was 30s and 40 somethings. So we're getting younger and younger partying crowd out here. So it's getting pretty wild. I have seen a slowdown in the economy. I do think that my heart tells me from over all the years that I've been living here that things will start to change and we're going to start having our locals with families coming back. I think that the prices of things are going to start coming down when they realize that everything's kind of overpriced right now, and they have to start being a little bit more reasonable if they want to, make the numbers and the volume rather than to, you know, charge the prices that they're charging. But we'll see. That's in development. We'll see. Time will tell if I'm right about that. But I would like to see more families come back to Montauk with children having a good time riding their bicycles and stuff like that, not just party all night, sleep all day type of environment that we've had lately. So anyway, that's a little bit about how I feel about Montauk, and it's a magical place, like you were saying. It's great. We have like beautiful beaches. People come from all around the world to come here for our beaches and in the ocean. Fishing is massive out here. Largest largest fish ever caught in the world are caught right off Montauk Point. Um, and it's just a great place. Every time I fly into MacArthur Airport and I come over Long Island, I feel like I'm home. I just can't wait to get back out to get home and I just feel safe on Long Island in general in Suffolk County. It's a wonderful place to live and it's a wonderful place to grow up. But that being said, we also have our darker side of Montauk and the area. And I don't want people to think that I don't want to show my face, because sometimes when people put glasses on, it's because they're trying to hide their eyes or whatever. The reason I'm wearing these glasses is they're like blue light blocking, and I have a
Me
like a
too.
neon light on my face right now, so it hurts my eyes. And I know we're going to be on the podcast for a while, so I put them on out of comfort. So I just wanted to make that point there. So let's talk about um, we wanted to talk, I guess, more about the Montauk project and the things that happened out there when a lot of us were out here as kids back in the 70s and into the early 80s. So let me backtrack a little bit. So um, when I was younger, I had I guess I can go back as far as like maybe 7, 8 years old. I used to remember I had these white curtains in my bedroom, and I would remember the curtains would glow maybe 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it was. I was asleep, and I'd wake up to the room would fill with light, and I didn't know what was happening. But if it was from the outside to the inside, it was almost like somebody shining 1,000 spotlights through your window, and the light was so blinding that I couldn't even see. Um, and this was going on for maybe, I don't know, a couple of years when I was younger. It probably started maybe when I was about 8 years old, I guess, and it probably continued till the time I was about 11 years old, and then it stopped, and there was no more. I don't know what that was. So that's kind of like what started the weirdness, and then later on, I was here in Montauk for the summer. And myself and a buddy of mine, John, we were driving further up the island, and we were just having a conversation. And a friend of mine says to me, "Oh, have you ever heard of this book? I just read this really interesting book. This is like 1994." And he says and I said, "Well, what was it?" And he said it's called the Montauk Project. And I'm thinking, oh, immediately it's like he's talking about like something with beach cleanup or finding seashells or something, like that. And I said, well, what's that about? It sounds pretty boring. And he said, well, this guy, Preston Nichols, he wrote this book, and, supposedly he was working out at the base on this thing. And I like, this is 1994. I had been here since 1972. I never even knew there was a base out there by the point. How did I not know there was a base in all of these years that I had been here? Myself and my brother, and we had driven our bicycles. We thought through every single street. We had been out to the lighthouse many times on our BMX bikes. And this place is out by the Montauk Point Lighthouse. This base, it was an Air Force base. How did we not go in there as kids? How do I have no memory of this at all? Mostly because it was closed in 82, and it was just wide open to the public, but I would have known about it, I would have thought. So he's telling me about this base in Montauk, and I said, well, what base? What are you talking about? There's no base. And he said, oh, there's the Air Force base. And I don't know of any Air Force base. And he said, no, it's out there by the point. There's a big radar dish and everything. And I said, well, I don't know anything about it. He goes, well, I'll lend you the book. Yeah, I have it at home, and you could read about this. So I read about halfway through the book, and and during that time, I was working a lot, couple different jobs or whatever. And then I started seeing flyers around town that there was going to be this meeting in town. And and Peter Moon and Preston Nichols were going to be there, and they're the authors of the Montauk Project. So I'm like thinking, okay, well, I just was reading halfway through this book. It sounds really interesting. It's about time travel, mind control, whatever. It might be BS, but maybe there's something to it. I don't know. I'm just gonna kill some time and go to this meeting. It was like at like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right in the square, right in the square in Montauk. This place it's the gazebo, right in the center of town. So we all meet up there, and he's talking about the book and what he's doing. This guy Peter Moon. I don't know if Preston was there. I don't think he was there that time, but Peter was definitely there, because I remember him saying, "Oh, I talked to him afterwards, and he's like, oh, who are you, whatever." And I told him, I've been here forever, whatever. I was, Um, I never heard of the base, but I was reading the book and I find it interesting. And welcome to Montauk. And he goes, oh, he goes, well, you could have been involved in this thing. And I said, involved with what? He goes, well, maybe you were one of the Montauk boys, because you were here, that you fit the profile. Back then our parents didn't care what we did, or where we were. And we had no cell phones. We never need to call. Montauk was very safe, so we thought. We'd literally disappear in the morning, come back at night. We're with our friends on BMX bikes. We're hanging out at Gamerama, the arcade in Montauk, hanging out at the beach. Nobody really cared about us. Nobody worried about us. We come back, we eat breakfast, leave, and then come back at night. And in between, nobody knew anything. So that's the way it was back then in the early 80s. So my um, kind of like lost my train of thought. So anyway, so Peter says to me, this is Peter Moon says to me, well, do you want to meet a friend of mine? He's one of the authors of the book. His name is, Preston, the other author. And I said, yeah, sure. He goes, well, he's going to be at this other place. I forget the name of it. It was some bookstore in Amagansett. And I said, okay, well, when? Oh, next week we're going to be doing a book signing over there. Preston's going to be speaking. I said, sure, this is interesting. So I go ahead. I'll go there. Preston gives his speech. Um, and after the speech, after Preston gets done, about an hour later, whatever, we're all leaving. And I said, well, I approached Preston and I said, oh, Peter, wanted me to introduce myself to you. He goes, oh yeah, Peter told me about you. He thinks you might have some connection or whatever. He says, whatever. I don't really have too much time right now to talk to you, but I think he was living in like East Islip at the time. He says, if you want to come over to my house, sit down and have a conversation. We both, have time. And I said, sure, I have time. Went over there, started talking for maybe a half hour or so. And he says, well, you meet a lot of the criteria of the kids that could have been involved in this thing. And I said, well, I don't know if I was involved, in anything. I read, half the book or whatever. And now I've gone to two of your lectures, that you guys were at, and just sounds interesting. I'm just here basically killing time. I don't know if I'm involved. It feels like I told him about the lights in the room and stuff, and he's like, well, that's maybe something to do with aliens or whatever. And I said, well, I don't know, but he says, well, if you want to, he goes, it won't take too much time, but if you want to, he goes, I do this thing. It's called deprogramming. He goes, I said, well, what's it involved or whatever? And he said, oh, you got to like lay on this um, it's like a tanning table type of thing, like I don't know, a massage table, it's padded, like something you'd probably see in a psychiatrist's office. He's just kind of like, we'll put music on and lower the lights. He goes, and I go through a series of messages, and I say certain keywords. And along with this music, he goes, I could put somebody under hypnosis basically, and go into their memories. Are you up for that? And I said, well, I've never been deprogrammed or hypnotized before. I said, I don't even know if I'm even capable of being, hypnotized. I said, but I'm willing to give it a try. Nothing better to do. I drove, an hour and a half to get here. So what, why not? So I'm laying there on this table. The music's going. The lights are low. Make a very comfortable situation. And he goes into this series of key words and saying key phrases and things like that. And the next thing I know, I'm in like in a different realm almost. He's regressed me somehow and to the past, to the 80s, early 80s, and I start recalling things. And but it's not like I'm just sleeping. It's like I'm thinking of things as if they're as if it just happened yesterday. It's not really the past. It's like it's very current. Now this is 1994. I'm regressed back to like 1980 at this point. A lot of years had gone by, 14 years. How do I have such perfect memories as if it's just something that's occurring like right now? It wasn't even like I said a memory from yesterday, but a memory from like yesterday, you don't remember details. Um, you remember parts of your memory from yesterday, but you're not going to remember every single word, every single bug that flies by. You don't remember every single thing. But when he regressed me, I was remembering every single noise, every little insect, everything around me, every little sound, as if I was just right then and there. So I'm thinking, so I go into a different realm basically in my mind. It felt like it was in my body and my mind, and and like 5 hours had gone by. I got there for like I think at like I don't know, I'm forgetting the time frame, but it was like 3 o'clock, and by the time I came out of hypnosis, it was like eight. It was like 9 o'clock at night. It's like I think like 4.5, 5 hours had gone by, and I only remember like 20 minutes of it, which is really to this day I don't know how come all these hours can go by, and how could a person be under hypnosis for so long and think they're under. I have a lot of memories of it, but how could I have been under hypnosis for so many hours and then only think it like 20 minutes had gone by? It's kind of weird that um it was almost like I was like in full sleep mode. Like when you go to sleep at night and you wake up and you don't know what time it is, and you could have been sleeping for 5 hours. You think, oh, I've only been sleeping for 20 minutes. Well, that's what it felt like. So anyway, and when I was being he called it deprogramming, he was asking me specific questions. He was asking me questions about him. He was asking me, so he said to me, okay, well, I'm taking you back to the base. Um, how did you get there? And what's your first memory of being on the base? And I told him that I had been driving my bicycle through town, and I told my brother we were all at Gamerama that day. I remember this very, very, very sharply in my mind. We were all at Gamerama, and this kid had black hair. He looked like my brother a little bit. He had really dark black hair, curly black hair, and was probably like maybe like this long. It wasn't quite to his neck, but about that long. And he was on a BMX bike, and I think that I'm the only one that knew this kid. Maybe we had ran into him. We had like a little bicycle gang, like 5 or 6 of us running around all over the place. But I think I was the only one that had come in contact with this kid maybe weeks before. And this kid told me that to meet him maybe like near the local grocery store, which was right across from the game room, Gamerama. And so I meet this kid like behind the grocery store or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, I want to take you out to this cool place. Then you could take your brother out later on or whatever." He goes, "But I just want me and you to run out there real quick, and I want to show you this place, and it's part of like the old Air Force base or whatever." And I go, "Okay." So we start riding our bikes out there, and we make it there pretty quickly. And then it's like a few miles, maybe like 5 miles from town. But we're on BMX bikes. We're young kids. We run out there. And when we got to the base, which is now it's the maintenance entrance. It's a keypad over there. But back then it was, I guess, the main entrance probably to the base. And there was a gate there, and the gate was open, and there was two men on the other side of the gate. And as we're riding our bikes through, the kid says, "Oh, this is my friend, blah blah blah, whatever their names were." Introduced maybe for like first names only, and one of them was like more formal, and the other one was dressed a little bit like they were both wearing like dress shirts, but I think one maybe had a tie on and a shirt or a jacket, and the other one just like had a like maybe an open collared shirt on, like this, but maybe like white. And so anyway, so he's, I said, "Oh, who are these guys or whatever?" "Oh, they're my friends." And I come out here quite a bit. This kid says to me, this is the kid, by the way, that tricked me to go out there. I think he was portraying himself to be like a 13-year-old kid, but I think he was more like 18, 19 years old, looked younger. And I think this kid lured other kids out there. I don't think I was the only one. But anyway, so we go there, and he's like, "Oh, follow me." The kid says, "Follow me," and we're on our bikes, and the adults are walking behind us. These two men, they're probably in their, I don't know. It's hard to judge age ages back then, but I would think they were probably in their 40s. Maybe one was a little bit younger in 30s, and the other one was maybe in his 40s. And so we go straight through that gate, and then there's a fence. Right now, there's a fence. I'm not sure if there was a fence there or not, but there's this fence, and along the side of the fence, there's this trail. And so we just go straight through the gate, basically go to the left a little bit, and then go basically on the side of these buildings. I think there were like oil pumping stations or water holding stations, and you go straight through there, and then you wind up literally behind the tower. So, and again, I had no memories of ever being out there. This is the first, like, it's like really cool to me because I'm thinking, well, this is quite the adventure, like I feel so special to be, at this place. There's adults here. I felt like a big kid, and this is really cool. And I don't know what this kid's going to show me, but this is really, I can't wait to go. I'm thinking, I can't wait to go tell my brother, how, I went on this adventure and I'm going to bring him here someday. And so all this is going through my mind as I'm like following this kid. And we get to this, at the very end of it, we get to this, it was like an entryway. It was like concrete on both sides. And there was a doorway there, and the door either was missing or wide open. And so the kid says, oh, Joe, follow me. And it was like really dark, like really, like no lights at all, no electricity. We didn't have any flashlights or anything. But I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be a wimp and not follow him. It's a little bit scary, but I'm gonna do it anyway. If this kid's doing it, I could do it too. So I follow him in, and the kid disappears like into the darkness. And I'm saying, well, he's got to be here someplace. I keep on walking. I'm like, now I'm in like total darkness. And at the but I do see this little bit of a light. Like, I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was electrical light, or it was, from a light bulb, or from the sky. I know I'm in like this tunnel at this point. I go through the door, and I'm in this tunnel, probably a few hundred feet long or whatever. I just keep on going. I can see the light behind me from the opening, and I can't, like, as I'm talking to you, I'm trying to remember. I can't see the guys, the adults, and I can't see the kid in front of me, but I know he went forward. There was no rooms. It didn't feel like it anyway. So I figure he's at the very end of this tunnel. So I keep going, finally get to the very end of it, and there's these roofs, and they're slimy, and they're like, it's like water has been dripping on them for like a long time. And it's like the only way I could describe it is an upside down house. And I described that many times. Funny enough, maybe a year later, after I'm talking about this upside down house publicly, I was talking about my memories on a different show. Stranger Things comes out, and I think one of their episodes was called The Upside Down. And I'm thinking, well, geez, they copied me, or at least that's what I think that they did for in the show. Because a lot of that stuff people say, oh, it's not really basis. Stranger Things has no basis in reality. It's all fiction or whatever. It didn't really happen. I think I've even seen articles that it's really not about Montauk. I know it's about Montauk. I feel it's about Montauk. I only saw 2 episodes of it, maybe 3 episodes, in just parts of them. It was so upsetting for me to watch it that I couldn't watch it. I've never seen the whole series. I've only seen a little bit of it, but I when I was watching it, I wanted to sit through it, but it was like I was having flashbacks, and I would feel all sweaty and nervous, and supposedly this is fiction. To me, it wasn't fiction. To me, these are events that actually took place, and it was a nightmare. So as I'm in this place, and it's dark, and it's slimy, and there's like a layer of maybe concrete and wood, and it looks like a ceiling, and there are walls, but they're like far away. It's a big giant opening, and I'm pretty adventurous, and I'm looking for this kid, because now I'm thinking, well, he went down into the hole. He must have shimmied himself down. He couldn't go any further, and he didn't go past me, so he must be down below. He must be a few levels down. I'm looking, and I could be, so there's light coming in. I did figure it was light coming in from the sky, and there was a hole, like in the, like it was like a part of the roof or whatever was missing, and then below it was a house. That's why I call it the upside down house. And below it was another level, and below that was another level, and another level, and like I think I threw something, like a rock or something, and I'd never heard it hit the bottom. It was far down, wherever it was, just kept going. But I figured I could shimmy myself down a couple levels. So I'm grabbing onto the side of this roof and it's all slimy and I drop down to the next level and then I'm like, crap, and it's like it feels really unstable. But I know this kid's got to be down there, so I'm like yelling for him, and there's no response. And I'm thinking, well, he's got to be down. He's probably in a room down there. This is probably just an entryway to get to it. So I go down. I think I made it I went from the first level to the second level. I may have dropped onto the third level, or maybe I was just hanging on to the second level, thinking that the second level was pretty unstable. Maybe the third level I'm going to collapse. So I either made it and I couldn't get to the fourth, but at one point I pull myself up off the side of this roof. It's like this collapsed roof, or floor, and I get back up and I get back up to the surface and I get out of that area and there's nobody there. There's no adults. I go back through the 100 or something foot, maybe 150 feet hallway. There's nobody there. The kid is gone. The adults are gone. I get back to my bike. I push my bike out through that trail. I get out on the road. I bike all the way back to town by myself, and I don't say nothing to anybody. I didn't even know what had happened, and nobody would believe me anyway. So I just kind of like called it a day. Went back to Gamerama, played Space Invaders, and that was it. Um, and then after that, I was grabbed riding my bicycle. I was, I think I may have been with that black-haired kid again. I don't know how I reconnected with him, but a van had got us. They pulled up on the side of us, and at this point, we weren't being like, I wasn't invited, or me and this kid weren't invited. We were just grabbed, and we were thrown in this van with our bicycles. I was literally still holding on to my bicycle. I had wrapped my legs around the bottom part of my bike so my bike wouldn't be left behind. I'm holding onto my handlebars, and they grabbed the hold of me and my bicycle. I'm just a little kid at this time, and they threw me into the van. The kid, I think he more or less came willingly. His bicycle was placed into the van, and he came into the van. And then the next thing I know, I don't remember actually going out to the base, but then I remember being in darkness after that. And then there was these tables, and similar to the table that Preston had at his house. He called it the deprogramming table or whatever. But these tables were similar to that, except for I was laying on this table and there was all these wires that were attached to my body, to my face, to my head, to my torso, to my legs, all these all these wires, and they were like leading into and so I was like semi-awake, semi-conscious, and I was cold. Like I'm right now talking about it, although it's very hot out right now, right hot in my house right now. I feel the chill as if I'm actually physically there right now. And these wires are coming off of me, and I think I had on like a pair of boxer shorts, but besides the boxer shorts, I didn't have anything on. Um, and I'm looking and I'm seeing that there's other children there too. I'm looking to my right and to my left, and I can see there's kids, and there's maybe even behind me there's kids. There's all of us are just lined up on these tables, and all of us have these wires, and the wires are heading off like it's all darkness. I can't see any walls, and the wires are heading off into darkness and away from us. They're all like basically coming away from our feet, and they're all heading in the same direction. It wasn't like we were like being it wasn't like we were being like a machine like an EKG or whatever. It's monitoring in each individual person. It wasn't like that. It was the wires were going into the darkness, and they were the only thing I could think of is that we were all being analyzed, or our energy, so whatever these wires were doing, they were taking something from us, either information or energy or something. We were all being monitored together, not individually. And so I never did. I don't know what those wires did. I mean, I could only assume that they were using our energy in the research I've done, obviously, as an adult now. I think they were using, it's not like electrical energy. It's some type of a psychic energy, or something to do with our souls or our consciousness. And they were powering up something with it, whether it being a person or a thing or a machine. I think they could only use our energy to power whatever it is up. It's not like AC or DC energy. It's something different. It's almost like if it's a soul, and I believe we all have souls, it's something to do with that, I think. So there's a bunch of my memories. And then Preston would ask me questions and he would say, well, do you see me? Am I there? And I told him, and now like he got me out of that scene. Somehow he says, okay, I want you to go to the next room. Is there any more rooms? Could you remember? And I said, yeah, he says, okay, now you're laying down. I want you to recall another event. So another event was there was a bunch of us kids. Now we're dressed. I think we were all dressed the same. I don't know if it was the uniforms that we had on, but I think we were all dressed in the same clothing. The pants, the shirts, they were like a darker clothing, and we were all dressed like that. We were all like standing at attention. Um, this is like 1980, probably like 1981. So I was still a young kid at the time. I was like 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. So now we're standing there, and Preston said to me, and again, this is really like talking about it right now. I went from being cold as I'm having this conversation with you. Now I'm sweating because when I was in the room laying there, I didn't have any clothes on, really, just a pair of boxer shorts, maybe white boxer shorts, I think. But now I'm fully clothed and we're underground, I think. And now I'm sweating. Right now I'm hot. My body's reacting to my conversation I'm having with you right now. And so we're all standing there, and Preston says, "Oh, could you see me?" And I said, "Yes, I see you. You're standing right in front of me." Now, Preston was a pretty fat guy. He was chunky, big guy. A lot of weight on this man. He was probably about 350 pounds. In our reality right now. But now in the past, he was a lot thinner. He was still big, but he was a lot thinner than he was when I met him in 1994 when I'm being deprogrammed. So he says, what do I look like? I described him. He said, and he's talking to me, having this conversation. He says, well, what am I doing right now? He says, I said, well, you're standing there. You have a woman. She's wearing a lab coat, but you're not wearing a lab coat. You're just dressed like in regular clothes. You have a long sleeve shirt on or whatever, and you have a tie on. And she's dressed in a white lab coat. I don't know who this lady is, but I know who you are because I see you. That's just you, a younger version of you. He says, well, how many people are there with you? So at that point, I'm looking straight ahead, but I feel like my memory from then, like I'm really there. I think there's 50 of us, and that's at the beginning of the show. You said there was 50 people, and that's you took that from a prior interview, that from a previous one before I really found out the real number. So I said, hey, I think there's 50 of us. There's 50 of us. There's 50 kids. I'm thinking that there's like five deep and 10 across, which is 50. And but I wasn't turning my head. I was just thinking that this is how many people there were. And he says, well, what's going on in my mind right now? What do you think I'm thinking? And I said, well, I'm looking at you right now, so I'm able to stare straight ahead. All this is I'm being regressed from 1994 to like 1980 or 1981, but I'm looking at his face in my memory, and I'm saying, well, I think that you think you're concerned about how many of us are going to live and how many of us are going to die. Like, is there anybody even going to make it? Like, any of these kids going to even survive? Those are. Although he's not speaking, he's. This is what I'm thinking. He's like I must have been there with him. I must have been involved with something with this guy to where kids are probably dying, and I'm losing people that I know or people that I'm associated with in this whatever we're involved in, almost like it's a training of some type. So Preston eventually regresses me. There's other things also. I remember being in like level one or level two and being in like this in a room, and he's asking me, he takes me to the next scene, to the next event. And I remember being in a room. Now he's not there in the same level I'm at. I'm by myself. I believe I'm by myself. At least I'm like looking around right now. and there's nobody there, but there's like this couch, and it's like an L-shaped couch, and like you can't get your like almost like a rubber room, you can't get yourself like hurt on it. There's no seams or anything. And I go to like touch it, and it's like it's like a cushion, but it's like there's some type of plastic covering it, and it's like a molded couch. And as I like lean over the couch, I put my knees on this couch, I look down at least 2 or 3 levels down, is gigantic high ceiling, and there's a machine down there. And it's like I'm so then I realize I'm in like an observation room. I'm here to observe, or maybe I snuck into this room. I walked out of some other room. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here, but I see this equipment, and the ceilings are super high, maybe 25 feet high, like a bunch of levels down. There's nothing in between, just just empty space, and then the lower one, like maybe 3 levels, 4 levels down, that's when I could see people, like scientists. Like there wasn't any soldiers or anything, just like scientist looking people. But I knew I was on a base. That's the thing. I have memory of being, this is a military installation I'm on, but these weren't military people. They look like the white coat type of people, like maybe engineer dressing people in a big piece of equipment, which I don't even know what this was for or anything because it was so far away from me. It was a lit up area, but it was metal or metallic. I could try to remember gray, black colors. There was no reds or blues, or there was no flags. There was nothing, no colors that stood out. Very like dull looking, whatever this thing was. And I think it was like, it wasn't circular. It wasn't like a UFO or anything. I think it was like a square, gigantic square piece of equipment. And these guys were working on it. There was other equipment off to the side. There was, looks like maybe wires going to it. And and then he takes me out of this. Now he says, "Okay, now we're done." I think that was the final scene. That was the final memory he that I'm exposed to, and that's when he like gets me out of this hypnosis. The music slowly shuts off, and he counts like from like backwards from like 10, and then all of a sudden like he snaps me out of it. Literally, I think he's snapping his fingers at this point, and I come out of it, and like 5 hours had passed. So that was my basic first interaction with Preston Nichols at his house, and it scared me so much that I drove home. Like I say, we're about an hour and a half from Islip, from to Montauk, where I live, and it scared me so much that I felt like I was in a daze. That the hour and a half drive felt like it took 10 minutes. I don't remember. Don't. I just remember getting in my car, and then I just don't remember anything else after that. Until I seem to remember hitting a guardrail, getting closer and closer into Montauk, and I think I was like, I hit a guardrail, and then I remember waking up in my bed, and then I said, "Oh my God, I hit a guardrail." And I had a van at the time. It was a nice little minivan. I said, "I'm gonna the guardrail." I hit the guardrail. I didn't remember how I got home. I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm more worried about my van at this point. So I walk out to my van, and I'm thinking, well, I hit it with the bumper, and I would have hit the passenger side because I was going eastbound. So I'm thinking I'm gonna find my van all smashed up, and there wasn't a mark on my van. But I remember the impact, and I remember the fear of, oh crap, I hit a guardrail. I don't know how the van got back to my house, or I don't remember anything after that. And my van was fine. It was like repaired somehow. Like it was never even injured. So that was weird. So Preston had called me like the next morning, worried about me. And he's like, you went through a lot yesterday. You had a lot of regression memories pulled out of you. I was worried about you. Are you okay? And would you like to meet again? And initially I said, yeah, sure. I'll meet you again. But yeah, I remember hitting this guardrail, but there's nothing wrong with my van. He goes, oh, I want you to also look at your body. I want you to tell me, do you see any marks on your body? He goes, because what you're describing with the van is something that they've done, and that they'll grab you and they'll fix your vehicle. They'll erase your memory, and you'll think that it was an delusion, like something. You'll think it was a dream, I said, yeah, it feels like a dream. I said, but I remember doing it. And so he says, look at your body. So I slept with my t-shirt on that night. So I went to the mirror and I'm looking at my stomach, at my arms. He says, look under your arms, look at your back the best you can. So I look over onto my side. It was my left side, and I said, I have a scar on my side. And he says, oh, wait, have you always had the scar? I said, no, I've never had a scar on my side. It's like parallel with my stomach, and it's on my, like, literally it was like right here. And and this is before cell phones, so I didn't take a picture or anything like that. But he says, oh, you have a camera to take a picture, and I didn't. And and I just described to him the scar. And it was maybe 2 to 3 inches long, but it looked like it had been healed already. It looked like it was healed for a long time, like maybe it was a couple of years old, but it was a major scar, but it was a couple of years old. And I described it to him like that, and he said, "Well, they have the ability to literally do something, implant or operate, or if you got hurt, they have a way to rapidly heal tissue." And he goes, within the next few hours, he goes, if it looks like it's a couple of years old now, he goes, wait till you see what happens in the next few hours. It should be completely gone, like it never even happened, like you never even had a scar. So as he told me this, and I'm thinking, well, he's full of crap. I must have been injured on my BMX bike or something, and I'm thinking that this scar is a couple of years old, but by the looks of it, but this is my mind playing tricks on me because of this whole deprogramming thing. Maybe he put thoughts. I'm thinking maybe he put thoughts in my mind. It could be anything. But as the day goes by, as the hours go by, probably at about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I kept looking like maybe every 15, 20 minutes because I'm intrigued by this. I'm like, is this guy crazy? Am I going crazy? Is this scar going to go away like he said it's going to? Like, did they use some type of a way to rapidly heal me to make the scar eventually disappear? And about 2.5 hours, 3 hours later, I'd say 3 hours at the most, I look down at my scar as it's fading throughout the day, and the scar has completely vanished. Like I was never had a scar. When I first looked at it, like I say, it looked like it was a couple of years old. It was a pretty significant injury that I had, and now it was completely gone. So that made me feel like something really did happen to me, and I didn't talk about it after that. Preston had called me a few more times and tried to get me to go back. He wanted me to be deprogrammed some more, but I felt like he didn't really care about me as a human being. I felt like it was more of his own selfishness or self-interest into finding what happened out there to us. And he had himself a human guinea pig on his hands. And it didn't, and as I was thinking about it that summer, and he called me a few more times, I just blew him off. I said, sure, I'll come back out again. I never did. I just kept blowing him off. I never went back to his house after that because it just scared me. And I thought to myself, this guy doesn't really care about me because if he did, he would back off. He would give me my space and realize that that he's injuring me mentally, psychologically by talking to me. So I didn't talk to him at all. And geez, a lot of years went by. I started working. Anyway, let's fast forward. I got married, had kids, and got married in 1994. I think, yeah, 1994. Had kids, and I started working out at the base. I was just working like courier company, just different jobs around, just keeping myself busy, making a decent living, but not a great living at the time or whatever. Just kind of like living a pretty humble life back then. And then I started working, fast forward all these different odd jobs or whatever. I get a job working for the state parks out there out at Montauk, and right around, it was 2002, it was the summer of 2002. I think it was right around May of 2002. And I wound up working there for 20 years. I actually retired from the park, and my primary location was Camp Hero State Park. So I was a maintenance guy out there, which gave me access to the entire base, the tower, everything. And met a lot of, great guys. I worked with I gotta say, I mean, the park system's really lucky to have the workers that they had out there during the time. I don't really know. I've been retired for 3 years now, so I really don't know who's there now, but really an exceptional crew. The majority very honest, caring people, cared about the park, cared about their jobs, didn't get any respect for it. Didn't nobody really cared too much about us. We were kind of like just worker bees. There's 5 guys that I worked with, but they were really good people. I loved them, all of them. But and a seasonal crew too. I mean, these guys were wonderful. A few bad seeds every once in a while, but but the goodness of us all, we out overshadowed the idiots that worked there, and there was a few of them. So in that amount of time that I was out at the base, I was approached by, well, Peter Moon kept in touch with me. I mean, he would call me like once a year, every 6 months or whatever. We'd talk and say, any do developments or whatever. Preston and Peter were totally two different people. Peter seemed to actually give a crap about me, about people that he thought were involved in the project. He seemed like to have some compassion towards us. He was interested in the story. It wasn't just about like what he thought. He was interested in the story. He was interested in getting these books out to tell his version of the story. But Peter was not involved in any of this. Peter Moon was he was not involved in the project. I don't remember him as a child being underground. I don't remember him being in any of the rooms or having anything to do with it. And I don't think he did. And I don't think he's making any claims that he did. He's basically like almost like he considers himself like to be like like he investigator. He investigates things and he puts it down on paper. And he tells the truth to the best of his ability. Now, um, I can't say to whether he's that accurate on everything or not. I don't think he is. Like none of us are really that accurate, but I'll leave it there. Like, Peter's got his book series and I think they're worth reading or whatever, but you he's basing the book series on interviews, on investigations that he's finding things out to the best of his ability and he's putting them down on paper. So I don't have anything negative to say, about him at that level. But probably 2002, I start working for the state parks. Wife at the time said, "Well, you've got these jobs, you're doing okay or whatever, but you really need a job that's gonna, provide, benefits and steady income and a pension or whatever, and your family needs this." So I said, okay, none of those jobs, had health insurance or anything. So I got this job. I love nature. So I said, I might as well do this. So I started working for the state parks in May of 2002, I believe it was. And worked that summer thinking, well, it's an okay job or whatever. And I started hearing about a maintenance job available, out by Camp Hero. So I said, all right, I'll go ahead and do that. I figured I could always, do other business or whatever on the side. I'll start doing this and I'll see where it takes me. Maybe I'll stick around, maybe I won't. But anyway, I wound up loving the job, and loved going to work every morning, meeting up with everybody, and starting our morning. I would do patrol. I'd go out on the beach. I'd make sure there was no boats on the rocks. Just basically doing a patrol of this park. You're driving along the cliffs, you're walking the cliffs. So it takes like an hour every morning or whatever. Do the first patrol and do another one late at night, and then in between doing maintenance stuff. It was great. I love working with my hands, cutting down trees, building trails, building bridges, clean up around the park, talking to cool people. Everything's great. I had 20 years. By the way, I must say, and as you've seen in probably other interviews, I was no lover of my boss. He was really the only problem I had. He had his way of doing things, and I'm, I, I don't like to brag about it, but I'm kind of an alpha male, and he had his own way of being, his own way of an alpha male. So neither of us really we butt heads a lot about a lot of different about a lot of different things. And but he basically he put up with me because he knew I was a hard worker, which he had said many times that that I'm one of his best workers. So, you know, he yelled at me a lot, talked down to me a lot, and I just took it. I was an employee. I didn't want to have too much conflict with him, whatever, but I did stand my ground when I needed to, and I felt it was right. And eventually, I became like the shop steward. So then I was like talking to him. Employees would have issues, and I would talk to them about other issues going on with employees, and I wanted to be like the best employee I could. I went through so many different trainings there, and bettered myself in my job, and I learned how to use most of the equipment on my own, even before any formal training, and just I really wanted to be great. I always feel like no matter what you're doing in life, whatever job it is, even if you're sweeping streets, doing maintenance, doing electrician, plumber, cook, I've done all of those things. And you know, and also worked at a professional level too, which I won't get into. But I always felt like I wanted to be the best, no matter what it is. I have to be great at it. Otherwise, why even bother to do it if you're not going to give it your all? So I did. I gave it my all for 20 years over there. I think and not to brag, but I worked everybody under the table. I could do the work of 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys. I bust my ass through whatever job that I was doing, and I would surprise them every single time. I was actually scolded for working too hard. I was told that I'm making the other employees look bad, and I had to slow down. And I never was used to working for the government. I was used to working private sector stuff. I was a chef at one time, stuff like that. And I always felt like I was always in a speed jobs, where you got to get the job done efficiently, fast, safely, but you got to get it done. You got to move on to the next thing. Like with cooking, on to the next meal. You're always getting food up on the line. Anyway, I felt like, hey, this is the way I have to be. Well, working for the government, it's not like that. They want you to pace yourself. It was hard for me to pace myself. I wanted to feel productive. So I was always, I thought, a shining example of what a government employee should be. A hard worker. I'm not working for my own self-interest. I'm a parks worker. I'm trying to better this place for the general public. I mean, they're paying my salary ultimately, and I want them to be proud of the park. I didn't want to feel like I was just taking a paycheck. I wanted to feel like I was working for it, which I did for 20 years. Anyway, so a lot of weird stories out there. Let's just get into stop talking about me, but a lot of weird stories were coming to me at the time. 20 years, a long time. Um, People would approach me, um, prior guys that had been in the military that worked out at the base, people that had been in there directly after the base closed. There back then, everything's pretty much sealed up right now. There's still one place that I know about. Maybe there's other places, but I know about one place. There's a hole in the ground. It's got like a 15-foot ladder down. It's one of the batteries, and I put a stick down there one time. It went down 15 feet. That's how I actually tied a tape measure to it. And that's when it was like literally right at the 15-foot mark, and it hits the bottom. So there is definitely an underground entrance through there. And when I've discussed that with other people, and other people have literally come to me that had literally dived it with scuba tanks and told me that yes, they've gone down to that hole before that bunker or that battery was sealed all up through the water with tanks, and they've gone into different rooms down there. Everything's decaying or old furniture. It's been underwater for all these years. And this is back when I first started. More of the stories I would hear back then, like early 2000s. And then later on, the stories got, less. But so I knew there was an underground then. And also had memories from that regression back in like 1994 from Preston Nichols. So I knew that these witnesses were telling me the truth about that. And I would never doubt them because it just coincided with my memories under the regression. And around, I think it was 2004, June, I wrote it down, actually wrote it down in the lunchroom. The only thing I could think of, this thing I saw out there, I think it was June 4th of of 2004. Bright sunny day. Punched out at 4:30, and um, I'm driving home. I'm going to leave now, right? I've been working there about 2 years already. I know what the deal what we have to deal with every day that I'm out there. Um, and that's break-ins, people breaking into the buildings. They're trying to look, the book's been written already for a couple of years. A couple other books have been written since. There's a lot of mystery out of Camp Hero by 2004. There's a lot of people out there breaking into a lot of the buildings that we have. Literally, we cement the walls. They go in there with sledgehammers or sticks or whatever, and they're smashing holes and stuff, breaking windows, which little glass windows existed, ripping boards off, and so, like, literally, like we do a morning patrol and then a night patrol, like later on, right before we leave around 3:30, 4 o'clock or whatever. And then throughout the day, we're doing patrols too, but our more extensive ones are then. So a lot of times we'll find like people breaking into buildings. They're in the radar tower area. Protocol is, we call the office, we let them know what's going on, call park police. Hopefully there's one around. They come over. If we catch anybody, we're supposed to just basically verbally tell them, wait here, the park police are on the way, which a lot of times they run. A lot of times the park police would actually, write them like summonses to appear in court or whatever, because they're in a restricted area. We have all these fences up around the radar tower based on the fact that there is all kinds of dangerous crap in there, like the old debris left over, towers falling down, different things are there, nails and broken glass. And so instead of cleaning it up, we put big fence around it with no trespassing signs. That's basically to keep everybody out except for the maintenance crew that has to go in there and make sure there's nobody in there breaking into things. So anyway, so that was going on. So all the time in those 2 years that I was there. So now let's fast forward. It's 2004. I'm going home. I'm going to leave through the maintenance gate. The radar tower is, I don't know, a half a mile away from the motor pool where we're stationed. That's our main operational building there. And I'm driving towards the maintenance gate. I'm going to pass the radar tower, probably a couple 100 feet away from the radar tower. All of a sudden, I see this, which I initially thought it's a man. He's dressed all in black. He's probably going to break into one of the buildings, or maybe he's breaking into buildings. But it's June 4th. It's like 4:36. I figure it took me about 6 minutes to get into my car. I punch out at 4:30, 4:36. I'm figuring here it is. This dummy's, he's right out in the middle of this road. He's right in the area of the radar tower road to get to the radar tower. And he's the road's like 30 feet wide right in that spot. I measured it with a tape measure the next day. That's why I knew things, which I'm going to get into. So I see this guy, what I think is a man. And so I put my brakes on because I'm thinking, Jesus, man, I'm already punched out. I don't want to have to deal with this. I don't want to have to call park police. I don't want to go home. I'm tired. I've been working all day. I don't want to deal with this. If I stop my car, let this guy far away from me, basically, I don't have to deal with any of it. He's going to go on his way. Park police, hopefully, maybe later on, find him breaking into a building if they're on patrol. But, I can't do anything. I'm off the clock now anyway. I'm done for the day. So I stop my car and I'm at a complete stop, but I've got this little green Geo Metro at the time. I think it was like 3 cylinders. So it's, it doesn't go that fast, but I'm completely stopped. I'm staring at this, which I think at first is a human being in the middle of the road. And he's not moving. Like he senses that I'm there, but he's just like staring straight ahead to the other side of the road. And I'm coming at him like this, heading towards him, and he's like on this part of the road. So he's crossed the road. I'm coming at him like this, but he like senses that I'm there about 100 feet from him. And and I'm looking and I'm saying to myself, well, holy crap, that's not the person. This is something different. This it's like it's like it's like I'm looking through him, but it's like the opposite of light. It's like completely bright out, but it's like a shadow, a totally dark shadow against nothing, against daylight. It's like a void in space is the only thing I could describe this creature as. But it's got legs and arms. That's why I'm calling him a creature and a head, couldn't see really any neck. Looked like his neck was pretty much connected to his like shoulder area like this, and he was like hunched over. And he's always, I'm gonna do it. So he's looking, he's like sideways like this, like on the road, and he's got his arm like this, and he looks over at me like this, and 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 I could see his face, like the darkness. I could see it, and all I could see is when he looks over, he's like his arms stop swinging. He was like in a swinging, like almost like that Bigfoot video, that famous Bigfoot video where he's walking, he's like swinging his arms. And that's initially what I had seen, like a little swinging of his arms. And that's when he stopped in the middle of the road. He realized someone's looking at him. And he just turns his head. His arms like freeze right in that position. And he turns his head like he looks at me like like this. Like looks at me like this. Like sideways, like this. And I see the eyes. I see this almost look like they weren't sunglasses. They were like silver eyes. It looked like just silver eyes, not white, but just like silver against the darkness of the shadow of the silhouette of this creature, of this thing. And I said, "Holy crap! It's a freaking monster. It's got to be a monster. It's some type of creature. This is not a human being. This is not an animal. This is not a deer. This is not a monkey. I don't know what the hell this is, but it's a creature that doesn't exist." And I thought, nobody's going to believe me unless I literally kill this thing. I'm going to put it on the hood of my car. So, and I'm not that kind of a person. I'm not violent. I love animals. I love everything. But I figure this thing's a threat, and I, I I can't identify it, but it looks really scary. And I'm thinking, unless it's probably going to hurt somebody, maybe it's going to hurt me. I don't want it around. It's a threat. I'm going to take this thing. I'm going to kill it. So I push. Initially, I'm not even scared. I just want to get this thing dead, right? I want to put him on the hood of my car. I'm going to wipe out. It's huge. I'm going to wipe out my car. I don't care. I'm going to kill this son of a gun. So I give it the gas in my car. Like I say, it's like a three-cylinder Geo Metro. It starts screaming. The engine screams before the car even accelerates. Roar, it starts to go. I get about 25 feet, and all of a sudden I realize I'm shaking so bad I can't keep my foot on the accelerator. It's going on and off the accelerator like this. I slam the brakes on because I can't keep pressure to accelerate. And the thing at that point, just like it realizes I'm heading towards it, and it freezes almost like a deer in headlights, and then it takes like a step. As it's taking a step, and it takes like at that step when he takes that first step, I accelerate again. Now I'm gaining on him. I'm probably only about 50 feet from him, and he takes that other step or a half a step, and he's all the way on the side of the road. So basically, he covered about 15 feet with a step and a half. That's how tall this thing is. That's how big this thing is. And his legs were that big. That's huge. So he takes that step. He's gone. He's like on their side of the road. And now I'm accelerating. I'm like, oh crap, it's getting away. I'm not shaking anymore. I crush the gas pedal. I get up to where it crossed the road, and and it and it's gone. There's like this big barbed wire. There's a barbed wire fence 6 foot tall. I measured everything. Like the next day when I went to work, there's barbed wire on top. Is you got 6 foot plus barbed wire, another couple of feet, probably a barbed wire, foot and a half, whatever. So there's no way it was a human being. The barbed wire was intact. The fence was intact in that area. There's no way this thing got over that fence. And I look, and I got out of my car, and I'm looking like in the ditch. I'm like thinking it's got to be running somewhere. I'm looking side to side. There's no sign of this thing. I was only on it a few seconds. Even though my car's slow. I mean, I went quick enough. There was no way it could have ran that fast. So I said, where the hell did it go? I'm looking on the other side of the fence. I'm thinking, well, maybe there is a hole. There's no movement. There's no creature. There's no nothing. Now the next day I go back, because I go to work, and I'm out in the truck or whatever, and I'm doing my patrol, and I measure. So there was a tree there, like this little, like in the intersection there where you can go to the radar tower and make a left or go straight on the road. Right in the center there was like this, and still there, the area, but the tree's now gone. It was gigantic, maybe an old oak or something. But the tree line, it was 9 foot, maybe a little over 9 foot at the top of that, by the top of the high of the lowest branch, the lowest limb going across the road was about 9 foot. So I measure it with the tape measure, and I realize that what I was looking at was something that was just barely below that limb of that tree limb. So what I was looking at wasn't a human being at all. There's no 9 foot people around. And this thing was about 9 foot tall. It was a gigantic shadow, much bigger than I was like. I say the first sighting was about 100 feet back. This thing was a lot bigger than I thought it was. But it literally dematerialized and went through that fence. I told people about it, and the parks the supervisor at the time, he found out that I was talking about two. It took about 2 weeks for him to find out. I guess somebody at one of the other locations said, "Oh yeah, Joe saw some creature out there or whatever." So he comes out. He's talking to me. He's saying this to me. He's talking to me. It's just me, him, and the mechanic was there, and he's saying to me, Joe, I heard you say you saw something out here, and I said, yeah, I saw this thing. I described to him what I had seen. He goes, yeah. He goes, that's what they said, that you had seen this thing. There may have even been a police report on it. Uh, I'm not knowing right now if there was or not. I don't. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't, because I think I even told one of the park cops about it. Whether he put it into the report or not, right now, I can't remember. But the conversation I had with this guy was that um, yeah, maybe you saw something, maybe you didn't, and but you're not allowed. You can't talk about it with anybody ever again. I never want to hear that you're talking about this ever again. So I'm like, I said, well, why shouldn't we know if something's here? And so the mechanic asked him. He's standing there listening to this conversation. He says, well, shouldn't um, we know if something is in this park. We work here sometimes late into the night. It gets dark early, in the wintertime, and we're here. We leave when it's dark out, and sometimes we're cleaning up, doing night stuff. He says, if there's something in this park, we should. This is the mechanic talking to my boss. He says, shouldn't I know, or shouldn't we know if there's something in this park that could hurt us, that could harm us? And he says, and his exact response was, he says, I don't know if there is, and I don't know if there isn't. Let's just leave it at that. And he walked away. And both me and the mechanic looked at each other and said, what the hell did that mean? You know, that's that's not the kind of response that we wanted to hear. I don't know if there isn't. I don't know if there isn't. Is this thing real? Or if there, he had just, I won't say the name of the person, but the mechanic says, um, geez, I've lost my train of thought. The mechanic asks him more detailed, about that, about the whole thing with this creature. We never felt good after that about did he always okay, you could leave this part in. It's funny how I could remember the stuff under regression really good, but things that happen, you know, without being under regression are um, not so easily accessible. Um, All right, maybe we'll leave it at that. I'm forgetting. I lost my train of thought on that one. Um, how it went from there. Okay, so let's break away from that with the creature. Um, I never saw the creature again. I never heard of any witnesses talking about that creature ever again. It was strange. People have seen things that shouldn't be there. Over the years, people have reported seeing bobcats out there by the lighthouse in that circle area. We have no bobcats in Montauk, but it wasn't just one or two times. A lot of times, people would see bobcats, and I'm thinking, well, maybe those bobcats came from the same place that this creature came out of, like maybe a different dimension or a different reality. I don't know. This thing was able to dematerialize and vanish. Maybe that's what the bobcats are doing out there too. Um, so anyway, over the years, people had come out doing different documentaries out there, and they would ask me. Peter would point them towards me too and say, I got somebody out there that knows a couple things about Camp Hero. So Peter would kind of like send them in my direction. Oh, you might want to interview Joe and talk to him about things. So I'd done a number of interviews over the years, probably like 5 different interviews, maybe 6 different interviews or different shows like Strange Universe and things like that. I think Strange World was one Strange Universe, maybe a Discovery Channel thing was out there. I'm not sure other ones, but um, in I think it was my very last interview I did. I think it was right around 2016. Um, this was like over like 3 days that they were interviewing me. One little interview out actually at the base. I wasn't working that day, so I met them out there, did a quick little interview. Um, anyway, like and then I met them in this restaurant. We talked a little bit, and then they had asked me if I was willing to be age regressed. So they hired this lady out of Hampton Bays, this hypnotherapist, and we wound up meeting all of us at a local hotel in Montauk. And so she says it's similar to the whole Preston thing with age regression. She plays music. She gets me into this state of semi awake, semi not awake, and she puts me under hypnosis eventually. I think it only took like maybe 10 minutes of this time to get me under hypnosis where I'm like literally age regress back. And now this time, now all these years later, let's first time I was regressed was uh, um, 1994 and the summer of 94, and now it's like the summer of 2016. I'm still working at the state park at the time. I hadn't retired yet. I took the day off from work, and she regresses me, and she brings me back basically to a lot of the same memories that Preston had dug out of my consciousness. And she tells me, it, and I go back to that room that I described earlier, where I told Preston there was 50 kids. Now I think I'm deeper under hypnosis this time. That when this lady and she hypnotized me for about 40 minutes. They actually showed only about 3.5 minutes on film. I think this was Strange World is the name of that particular segment or series. And so she's asking me these questions, and she asked me about the room with Preston and the lady there, and and she says to me, "How many kids are with you in the room?" But unlike with Preston, where I was able to really not move my head very much, and I was able to basically estimate how many kids were there. I think I was like under such a deep hypnosis, I started crying and I started getting like emotional, and I felt not just that I was there in the room, but I felt like I was feeling all the pain of being in that room with all those children. It was and she's so when the lady said to me how many kids are in the room, I said, "Give me a second," and I was able to actually turn my head. Now this is like 1981 we're talking about, either 80 or 81. I'm thinking it's 81, but it's 2016. How could I turn my head in 1981 and look behind me and to the side of me if I'm not there? I was really, really under deep hypnosis. So the memory was there, plus some. Plus, I was able to interact with an a younger version of myself in the past. And he was able to interact with me to show me what he's doing. So the younger version of me is now turning his head, and now I'm able to count 7 deep and 10 across. It wasn't 5 deep, it was 7 deep. 70 kids. It wasn't 50 kids at all. And I'm not sure if if they kept that as part of the 3.5 minutes of that age regression thing I did, but it's 70 kids. And there was other things that had happened in that age regression, um, but that was a major event for me. And I said, I want to take them with me. I wasn't under for 5 hours like I was with Preston Nichols. I was only under about I think 40 minutes total. But when she was trying to pull me back to try to get me awake, I didn't want to wake up. And I remember her, like getting nervous, saying, wake up, trying to snap, trying to do the counting and everything. Come back to us, come back. And I didn't want to. And I was I was crying and I was sweating and I was really there. I felt like I said, I'm here. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave them behind. I could take them back. I can grab them. I can hold them. I could pull them back with me. I'm going to take somebody with me. I felt like I could, if I could just put my hands, just squeeze one of these children, pull them tight to me. When I come back to consciousness, I'm taking them back with me. When I'm bringing them back, I'm taking them back to 2016. I'm going to save one. I can save one. I know what's happening now. I can save one. She's telling me, you can't, you can't. I'm saying, but I could save one. And it was so upsetting. And I was crying and I was screaming. And she eventually, it took her a while, but she eventually took me back to 2016. And and I physically came out of it. And I was just so distraught. I was so upset that she pulled me out of there. And then later on, she had told me, like if I would have left you there, if I would have done what you wanted me to do, there was a chance that you could have stayed there forever. You could have, your brain could have literally, you could have gone into some type of other realm and you could have been in a coma. We may never pull you back out. So she said you were under hypnosis for a long time, much longer than I wanted you to be under, but I was having a hard time pulling you back, taking you back into 2016 to our current time. She says, so I needed to save you. I needed to pull you out, which I did. She said, well, I'd be willing to, you know, she called me, she was emailing me, texting me. She wanted to do free sessions and the production company was so freaked out by the thing. They said, well, we'll pay whatever kind of for any kind of hypnosis, hypnotic therapy you want to do. It's an open checkbook. Joe has our full support. We'll write you any check you need. Every many times a week he wants to come see you. We want him to we want him to feel okay with himself about what had happened in the past. The lady, the interviewer later on met me in the lobby. We all walked downstairs together after it was all over. She said to me that she said to me, either you're the best actor, because earlier you had introduced myself as an actor. She said, well, either you're like the best actor that's ever existed, or something really horrible happened to you and those kids down there that 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 I've just never seen anybody go through what you went through before. And she was like hugging me and she said, anything you need from me, you can call me anytime, night or day. I'll be there for you. And I thought to myself, well, I knew I was really upset and everything, but I didn't want I didn't want that. I didn't want all these people to go out of their way to try to help me. I don't need therapy. I didn't need anything. These are memories from the past. People go through things in their lives and they just deal with it. You get strong, you cope with things, you get tougher and you muscle through it, you push forward and you just live a normal life. And although I'm thinking of these memories, they're still memories. This is still the past for me. And as as it is for all the other 69 kids that were down there with me. And I don't know how many groups over the years, but that's what I counted with my group. There was me and 69 others that were down there. I don't know how many of us survived. I know I'm still here, physically still here. I don't know any of their names. I think that's the way it was also designed for us not to know each other, not not to know each other at all. No names, no faces. Everything was always darkness. Couldn't see anybody, so you never knew who you were training with. Um, and I don't even know what the hell they had us training with for, or what they were using us for ultimately. I mean, I'd like to think that it had something to do with the time travel that Preston and Peter speak about in the book and stuff like that. Could have been parallel universes, could have been stuff that has nothing to do with that stuff at all. I don't know why we were there. We were there for something. Somebody was spending a whole ton of money to hook us up to this equipment and to interrogate us, to torture us, to do whatever the hell they wanted to do with us, to scare us into submission. So I don't know ultimately why. I could just theorize what they wanted us for, but um, and as you said earlier, yeah. So you said that I could point out exactly where if I had a machine, if they would let me dig, I could dig down into one of the like into that room that I described with Preston. Now, we didn't enter that room from the surface, but we entered it. I'm 99% sure that we entered it through one of the batteries, and I know the direction of travel that we traveled into it. And I don't know how I know, but I know exactly where to dig. I maybe it's just because when we were trapped, when we would, all of us kids, when we would walk through this tunnel to get to that one room, which was far away from that battery, and it was by the gate. Um, and I think I was smart enough, even as a young kid, to count the footsteps, maybe that I was able to know where I was going in case I had to try to escape or get out, or maybe when I was leaving because it was just so dark. So the only thing I had was my ability to count. I couldn't really see anything in front of you besides maybe the backs of the kids in front of you. So I'm pretty sure I know exactly where it's at. And if I had some ability to dig or they would let me, I'd be able to dig down to that room. And I think what we'd find is a cement room with nothing there but concrete. And then off of that room, there has to be another tunnel that would lead us to possibly that observation room that I described earlier, that goes down where you could look down 3 or 4 more floors with that 25-foot ceiling. So I think that there's under the base, I think that there's a series of tunnels and rooms. Some rooms are 25, like that one was 25 feet tall, and with equipment down at the bottom with an observation room at the top. And then there was probably a lot of other rooms that were much smaller. Could be classrooms, could be training rooms for something. But I feel like there's a lot of other. I feel like the underground over there is probably pretty extensive. Now I don't know who was running it. I wouldn't like to think that our government was behind it. I don't know who was behind it. I don't know if contractors or it was uh, people paying people off or I don't know who was behind it. Um, I don't know if it was a taxpayer paid project, a black project that they have, they do it all the time. Um, I think it was, well, Preston was there and he was an American. The woman, I don't know, I don't remember her speaking at all. I don't remember her voice. So there was definitely one American involved. Those two men that I met in 1980, the two adults, the 35-year-old and the 40-year-old, if that's what their ages were, probably, they were American. The kid that lured me out there for the first time, he was an American, or at least they talked like us. They didn't sound like foreigners, any of them. So I think it was a U.S. based project, whatever was happening out at the base at the time. So anyway, uh, those are my memories, and I don't know how to help anybody. If anybody comes to me and says the only thing I could do is say that I have memories, I think something happened. I don't know what happened, but I can't say I can't tell anybody that it's going to get better, that you're going to feel better someday. I don't think you will. I don't think any of us will. What happened happened. It's in our past, but we're victims. None of us were there on. I could tell you other stuff that they made us do out there, horrible, violent things. And then later on, Preston, which I won't say because who the hell knows if what I did was real or not real. And if I did do some things in the trainings, I want to believe that they were trainings that the things that they were training us to do were very bad. And if I tell you what they were, God forbid it comes true, then, you know, anyway, um, but Preston informed me that he knew for 100% sure that we didn't actually do what we remember doing. He said that that this was a training that they were making us do. They just wanted to see if we were capable of doing these horrible things, not that we actually did these horrible things. That we weren't there for the reason that they wanted us to believe that we were there for. They wanted us to believe that we were capable of doing horrible, horrible things even as children, but I don't think I'm capable of doing horrible things as a child or an adult. I love animals, I love people, would never hurt anybody. But I think that was part of like them breaking us down psychologically to control us ultimately. You know, there's people out there. I've met people over the years that said that they were involved in different things, super soldier programs and things like that. I don't know if any of that's real. I don't have any memories of being a super soldier or going out on people have told me they've been on all these missions and things like that. I don't have any memories of anything like that. Maybe I didn't graduate. Maybe they did something. Maybe they were the percentage of people that they went to the next level and became super soldiers or something. I didn't. I mean, I would have thought with the two regressions that I had, they're very similar to each other, but the other one was just more intense with the memories or how detailed things were with me able to turn my head in the past. But the super soldier stuff, I'm not doubting that something like that could have happened because if I have memories of this, I think anything's possible. You know, once they break your spirit, you're like, you know, I remember them killing us and then bringing us back and killing us. That was part of it too. I could describe that. I could discuss that that we died and then they would bring us back to life. And then they would hurt us. They would torture us so horribly with a lot of it was with electricity that we would literally just wish ourselves dead, and then our hearts would stop. We would be dead, and then they would bring us back to life, um, and then they would kill us again, and it was just a matter of just almost like was like after a while you just get used to being killed and brought back to life anymore. It doesn't even first you're really scared and then you just kind of like get used to it and then you're not scared anymore. You just dying is just part of being brought back. They're going to bring you back. You know you're going to be brought back because they just brought you back 5 minutes ago. So yeah, you're going to die of fear or some electrically induced coma, but they're going to bring you back again. They have the ability to bring you back. At least they brought me back. I can't say what happened to the other 69 kids that were with that group that I was with, and there could have been many more than that. That was just the 69 that were in that room. So, yeah, definitely torture was involved. Um, I'm glad that I'm recalling all this stuff with you, and I believe my last interview was 2016, and it was, and that was the last hypnosis that I was under, and I'm recalling right now as much as I possibly could. Um, you know, some stuff I'm holding back because obviously I don't want, I'm trying to hold back names too. Of people that were, of people that are in no, you know, here physically existing now that I don't want to embarrass them or have them questioned about any of this stuff because I don't have permission to use their names, nor would I wouldn't think that they would even want their names involved because, you know, when you come out and start talking about this kind of stuff, you're labeled as a crazy, a kook. Um, and I don't feel it's my right to implicate anybody and subject them to any of that bullshit that people like to do to victims. You know, people are mean. Human beings are mean. Somebody can get raped, and they say the person that was raped is well, she asked for it or he asked for it. They put themselves in this position to be a victim. They, you know, where somebody's walking at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, because they're getting home from a restaurant in New York City or Brooklyn or Bronx or somewhere, or city, they're walking home. Well, they maybe shouldn't be walking home alone. and somebody attacks them and they're a victim, they get raped, and then you hear people like people being interviewed, and that it's not even any compassion for the person that was raped or abused. What people say is, well, they she put herself or he put himself in that situation. If he wasn't walking home, he should have known better or she should have known better to walk home at 2 o'clock in the morning by themselves. People are disgusting and they say, well, they deserved it because they put themselves in there, in that situation. I can't feel sorry for a person that's so stupid to walk home at, but that's the way victims, and I do consider myself to be a victim of this crap. I didn't ask for any of it. With this a little kid, little kid, you know, and I don't think any of those kids that were with me asked for any of this bullshit. I think that whoever these people were, and I'll call them bastards, whoever they were, had their own agenda. They don't care about hurting kids or killing kids. They only cared about whatever their ultimate goal was. And that's the same thing as far as I'm concerned, those people that grabbed us, they're no better than rapists or killers or any other kind of scumbag that exists on this planet that either take pleasure or take profit on hurting other people. So anyway, people can say that this this guy, me, I'm a crazy person, whatever, because I'm a victim of this bullshit. They can say anything they want about me. But if maybe one person that I'm talking to right now actually gets if maybe 1,000 people will see this interview, maybe one person will say, "Well, wow, I'm a victim of something like this too." So I, I'm not alone. I think that's important for a person to feel like maybe they've been victimized, but they're not alone. Other people have gone through similar situations. I hope not this. I hope that I hope their souls are resting in peace. Those other 69 that I was in there with, if they're alive still, any of them, I hope they are. But if they're not, for some reason, I don't think hardly any of them are. If any of them are, I think very little of us actually ever walked out of that place. And I don't know why I'm still around. I don't know why I'm still here. Maybe they gave up on me. Maybe I didn't meet their criteria, or maybe I just aged out to be part of the program because, like I say, it was kids. Maybe when you get to a certain age, I don't think they could use our energies anymore. I think we're just expendable at that point. So we either live or we die. They don't care. It's people that do things like this to us. They never cared about us to begin with. So anyway, guess that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. It is so horrific to hear what you went through, and to know that so many others have gone through this. You think about just your experience seeing that many kids in one room, that's one person's experience. You think about, how many decades did this go on, or how many years, or how many different groups are being brought in. And then this is just one location of so many thousands that people have named in the world where they've had something similar, where they've been in groups in rooms of dozens of children, and it's really disgusting how you said that people are they're just so psychopathic that they have these weird things that they, whether it's time travel, whatever it is that they're interested in, that they're willing to profit off the backs of children in a sense to further research at the expense of harming others, especially little innocent ones. And it's a miracle that you did walk out of that. I believe you're here to share your story, and to give your children a good life, to break any cycles, of that happening and continuing on. And it's incredible that you're able to share all of this and that you were able to get this many memories back. I really do pray that it corroborates other stories, that it helps give puzzle pieces, and it will 100% make other people feel less alone, because there's a lot of people who can't share these things with others, knowing that they too are going to be called crazy or not believed, told that their memories are fake or implanted or whatever it is, and it's horrible how ill trauma informed our society is, that we don't even understand how the brain works, that you can be under so much trauma that your brain just, as a child, you leave your body and your brain compartmentalizes the memory in your unconscious, so that way you can survive. It's so, I mean, it's just horrible how survivors are treated. You guys finally get the courage to speak up, and people, you know, they don't know and understand what you went through and they don't know how to accept it and deal with it. But we do. There are people out here who believe you, people out here who want to hear you speak and understand what you went through, so we can try to figure out how to stop this. So we can connect your puzzle with all the other pieces out there and, try to figure out what the heck's going on, who's behind it, what they were trying to do, and, ultimately put an end to it. And I really do believe that the snowball's starting to roll a little bit more. There's a lot more survivors coming forward sharing. There's a lot more testimony out there. There's people that are waking up to their abuse and recalling memories at earlier and earlier ages, and I really do feel like we're at a pivotal point where society is starting to believe some of this when they weren't before, and I feel like you were really before your time speaking out, and you were doing it before there was really any kind of acceptance of this, before it was mainstream. It was kind of, hidden on the dark web when you'd hear a survivor testimony of any kind, a Kathy O'Brien, or, some of the older survivors who have been speaking out for a long time. You sort of had to dig for that information. It wasn't sort of out in the mainstream. And, we're really grateful that you're able to share all of this, and despite how it affects you and despite how traumatizing it is and was, and that you do it selflessly for others at the expense of yourself. We're really grateful and appreciate you sharing all of this.
Well, you only live once, and if you don't make it, I think a person has to make some difference in the world, hopefully for good, or at least our perception of good. And I don't, as you're talking and as you're saying those things, I think to myself, yeah, we're victims. Maybe, just maybe there was some good to come out of it. Maybe they built weapons to protect us from who knows who or who knows what. By using our energies, maybe they sacrificed us to protect the lives of the many of the majority. Maybe they needed us. There was no other. Maybe they couldn't ask our parents for permission to use us like this, but they just needed us to serve for survival of maybe our country or maybe other masses of people. I don't know what they were using our energies for or our spirits for, but they were. I'm hoping it wasn't for evil purposes. What they did to us wasn't nice, but maybe something good came out of it in the end. I don't know. Maybe the way we are, our way of life that we have right now would be radically different if they hadn't used us. I'm just trying to rationalize some good, possibly good that could have come out of this. That's all. I'm not saying that. All I know is that as a child, if what I'm saying to you actually happened, and I believe in my heart that it did because I'm very emotional talking about it. So, you know, I don't, like if you have a dream, when you talk about a dream, well, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later from the dream, you don't start sweating, you don't start feeling cold as you would have felt when you were actually physically there. So this is not a dream.
Memory.
Um, and so a lot of people will say that it's a dream. You just dreamed it.
No,
How could it I just don't. I've dreamed a lot. I mean, I dream. I remember dreams almost every night. I have a dream. When you first come out of the dream, you remember your dream. Sometimes you remember it for 10 seconds. If you go back to sleep, you forget it. But by the time you come to full consciousness, you forgot that you dreamed at all, unless you write it down and then you wake up and you look over. Oh, I wrote this down. This is what I must have dreamed last night. I remember waking up at 2 in the morning out of a nightmare or whatever. But 10 years later, 20 years later, you don't remember that dream as if it really took place. Like not only taking place, as if it's actually happening. Like I feel like I could physically touch these people. I could physically, that I was just now when I was having this conversation with you, I felt like I was actually there. I'm not even under hypnosis right now, and that's what's the strangest thing about all of it. It's almost like there's like another reality that's actually taking place, in that certain people could access those realities not only under hypnosis, but when they're hypnotized and then they talk about it even all these years later, it's like they're actually there. And that's no dream. I can't, I can't, I don't think any psychologist would say that's a dream. It's not a dream.
No. And
So,
another reason why that doesn't hold up, all these different people around the world that are remembering just very similar circumstances that happened in their own childhood, maybe very unique to them, maybe not the same environment and same type of abuse or experimentation that you went through, but just as heinous of abuse with, these organized groups of people who are doing it secretively. Why are none of the dreams or fake memories good? Like why are they always these about being tortured as a child and the same exact experiments and the same exact weird things that happened and the same exact type of ritual abuse or trainings or conditionings or things that they saw, like how you were saying, there's things that were so horrible that you didn't even want to say today. And a lot of people have very similar
well,
things that they saw, so it's like why are none of these things really good that people remember? Why are none of the dreams like the best dreams ever? And they're dreaming these incredible things and remembering them and it changes their life in a good way, and they're remembering all these really good things. It's always bad. So it's like it just doesn't hold up. Our body keeps the score, like Bessel van der Kolk says in his book. The body remembers, and so does our unconscious mind, and our body is really, really good at surviving, and it'll even do it at the expense of us having amnesia to our own lives, just to survive. And it's actually a really incredible mechanism, but it's just, that education's been wiped out of academia. Therapists and psychologists these days barely even know about it unless they seek additional education outside of their college courses, and because we learn from them, they're considered the experts. Society doesn't even know that our bodies are capable of doing these things. So, and most people don't go through what you did, and so they didn't have to experience having to survive in that way as a child and having to suck all those memories into your unconscious mind and have them pop up later on at a different time when you're safe and, able to remember. So, it's not fake. It's not. And this podcast with, 5 full years of testimonies of the same exact things happening, the same way that the body represses memories, the same way that somebody can remember. At some point we have to really look at what we're saying and point the finger back at somebody and be like, no, this is proven. There's too many testimonies. Like we have proof through corroboration, and it's undeniable at this point. And even a lot of therapists now, I get contacted all the time by therapists who are finding my show and saying that they're working with clientele that have had dissociation and are remembering as adults what they went through. And it really encourages me, and they're networking together and getting together behind the scenes and having groups where they're educating each other and helping each other, so people are starting to realize it. It's just, we need more people to realize it. And it's these types of conversations that help normalize it when we can get lots of people together to share their experiences, clinical diagnoses, if they've been to therapy, how they've recovered memories. It's all very similar, even though the stories behind it are very different, but like I said, we believe you, and it's horrific that you've had to remember these really bad things, and that the things that you remembered weren't wonderful. And it's so sad that you're not alone, that there's so many other people. But at the same time, it's really encouraging that a lot of you now are speaking out about it, and helping.
well, like I say, there's some things that I didn't discuss because, and I revert back to, there was a story that I remember listening to in Art Bell. I don't know if you remember that guy. He died maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago now. He talked about the paranormal and spoke about a lot of conspiracy theories and things like that. But I remember one time he had a guy on that swore he shot a Bigfoot. Um, I think it was like back in the 60s or 70s. He shot this Bigfoot, him and his friends. I think there was two other guys, and they buried this Bigfoot. And the reason that, and they buried it under rocks, and years later, He said, I can go back. I know exactly where we buried it by this river, whatever. We put the rocks on top, buried this thing. And Art Bell said, well, why'd you bury it? He said, well, we didn't know. We didn't know, if we know what we shot. It wasn't a human. It wasn't an ape. It wasn't a bear. This thing was something different. It was a different type of species. He said, but if they were to do a test on this thing and they were to find out that this thing was part human, though even it had some human DNA, he was afraid that this thing wasn't armed, but I guess they shot it because they wanted to kill the Bigfoot. These guys were out there hunting. They wanted to shoot animals. They recognized this thing wasn't a bear. They realized it was some type of a creature, and they couldn't eat it. But like these big game hunters or whatever, they like to go out there and they like to kill a bear, have a taxidermy or whatever, and put its head on the wall. From what I remember of the story, these were these kind of guys. Three rifles, three guys, maybe a couple pistols on them, and they wound up shooting it with multiple different guns. And they wound up eventually it was the male Bigfoot. They took it down. The female Bigfoot they shot too. I don't know if they ended up burying both of them or just the one of them, but ultimately it came down to these guys were afraid that if they were to call the local authorities, I think there's like in Montana or something, and they were determined, yes, this thing was like a part human, then they could have actually been arrested for murder. So this guy, I think his you could probably look it up on YouTube. I think his name was like Bugsy or something like that. That's what he called himself. The one guy that gave the interview to Art Bell. And he talked to the other two guys that were both still alive. And he said, that he was on the Art Bell interview and he didn't mention their names or anything like that or the exact location where they had buried this thing. And he said that, um, do you want to come forward? Do you want to unbury this thing so people could see it and we could finally prove once and for all that this creature exists? And the other two guys, I guess, talked him out of it and said, no, we don't want there could be legal implications. We could all be arrested and be thrown in jail for the rest of our lives for killing a Bigfoot. If it's part human, if it's an animal, not just an animal, if it's an animal, maybe they could justify it, say it was an animal. It's like a bear. We were hunters. We killed an animal. But if it's human or part human, then we could be arrested. We could be put in jail. It could cost us financial. It could, it's too big of a risk. So
Yeah.
they don't want to take a chance. And that's why some of the stuff I've withheld from you because I don't want to be questioned by authorities on did you really do this bad thing that these bad things, although I was a little kid, what about if these things actually really did happen? What about if Preston Nichols is wrong, that they actually did make these little kids do these things that I haven't described at all what they made us do? But what about if we really did? Obviously against our will, whatever. But if we physically did these things, and then years from now, somebody wants accountability for what happened, I don't want to open myself up to anything. But so that's why I only speak of what I will keep me not from getting into trouble, whether I was a victim or not. To see, I believe in the legal system. I think the U.S. legal system is the best legal system on the whole planet. I respect cops. I believe that the military is necessary. I believe an armed society is a safe society. Believe in the Constitution. I consider myself to be a very faithful, very devoted American citizen. And but in the same sense, there's a lot of people that pervert the legal system to use it for their own benefit, and uh, and they use the legal system to hurt people, and we see this all the time, mostly at the national level, with politicians dragging other politicians through the mud. Even if they did the exact same thing, they're accusing the other politician. They just basically want to take that politician out of the equation, so then they have no competition in their criminal activities. Well, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to anybody I know. I don't want any of us to be questioned. So, with what information I've given you, I haven't given you anything that can get anybody in trouble, including myself. Just telling you what I remember. And
Mhm.
so you're not, so anybody that's out there that wants to make a victim of me twice, you can't do it. I haven't given you anything to make a victim of me twice. You can't hurt me with anything I've told you. And that's that unfortunately is why I think a lot of us you'll are it's a rare thing that people come out and talk about these things,
Yeah.
even if they are needing therapy and needing help to talk about it. I don't think I need any therapy or any kind of help. It's memories, and memories, unfortunately, good and bad, they turn us into who we are. And I don't I don't want somebody to erase my memories because I'd be a different person. Maybe I wouldn't be the person I am right now,
Hmm.
which I think relatively I'm a good person. No angel for sure, but you know, anyway, I just thought I'd close by making that statement. And if you're out there and you're a victim of anything like this, you don't have to come forward. You don't have to talk about it on a podcast. You don't have to be in the newspaper or make. You don't have to talk about it with anybody, even your wife or whatever. The people close. You don't have to talk about it ever. You could continue to just protect yourself, protect your heart, protect your spirit, protect whatever makes you you. Don't let anybody change you. Don't let anybody make you feel less of a human because you've been victimized. And don't let it eat you up inside because there's a lot of evil people in this world, but there's a lot more beauty than evil. The evil just likes us to make us believe that everything is negative and bad. But this is a beautiful world, and it's a beautiful planet, and there's a lot of beautiful people. And just remember that there's a lot more love out there than there is horrible people that do horrible things. And so,
Do you have
thank you
time
for
for just a couple of
interviewing.
questions?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Upon researching, and I've heard this many times, but I was reminded of it researching your story particularly. There's been reports in Montauk, people have reported having ringing in their ears or being affected by frequencies. And then there's talk of speculation about the radar tower and people saying, why did they even have that there? What was that for? And maybe you don't know the answer, but have you heard talk from locals or do you have any speculations about that tower or it affecting people or have you experienced that?
The ringing in the ears I've had since I was a kid. It doesn't happen all the time. As a matter of fact, it probably hadn't happened for a few years, but maybe a couple weeks ago it happened again.
Okay.
It's almost um, like a low frequency, not a vibration, but you hear almost it distorts other sounds other around you. Um, uh, it's some type of like a low pitch. And I've researched that on my own. And certain people hear it. They say that, and I don't know where it comes from. It could be something just in nature that's doing it, but they
Hmm.
say it has something to do with harp. That whatever they're doing up there, I think in Alaska with harp.
Okay.
Um, and it may have something to do with that, but no one knows for sure where it comes from. It could be scientific equipment they turn on and off, or it could be something in nature. It might have something totally natural before we even had electricity on the planet. Maybe people have been hearing this, but it's a certain amount of the population do hear that low pitch sound of some type. So I've never talked to anybody about in Montauk if they hear the sounds or not, so.
Yeah. And speaking of locals, these stories are obviously more popular now, starting from back in the day, years ago. When you started talking about it, you do have, the Camerons who have talked about it, Preston Nichols, there's Max Spears. There are stories out there. Is there any lore about, do you ever hear locals talking about it? Do they seem to avoid the topic there? Or what's it like now that this information's a little bit more popularized in society?
Well, I mean, I don't ever go to bars. You'll never hear somebody saying that Joe's a drinker and I saw him in this bar talking about this. You'll never see me in a bar. I just don't drink. I don't have any taste at all for alcohol. So if I think people are talking about it, I think they're probably talking about it in bars. If there's, and I gotta say, there's not very many locals around anymore. I mean, there's just a handful. I think one person that I went to school with out here is still in Montauk, and this one woman that I used to work with. But besides that, I don't think anybody I went to school with is still here. Um, Everybody moved. Anybody I knew, they all moved. They sold during COVID. It was the last of like the exodus from Montauk. Their houses were worth a lot of money, and they got top dollar. They're worth two and three times more now because the prices kept going up. But everybody just kind of like looked at it like, hey, you know what? We're retiring young. We're retiring early. We're gonna have a good life down south or out west. We're gonna take this money and run. So a lot of locals took off.
Okay.
So not to mention that, all the laws against fishing and the amount of fish you can catch and the size and stuff like that. That took out a lot of the fishermen too. There's still a lot of fishermen here, but there's also a lot of new fishermen in the area too. But a lot of the local fishermen all left because of all of the overregulation on fishing, on the commercial fishing. So a lot of the guys that would have been here in the 1980s are um, well, they're aging out, too. They're dead of old age or they moved. So I don't hear anything like that. The only time I really hear anybody talking about the Montauk project or anything is I have one friend that talks about it, and her boyfriend. They both talk about it. They're locals. They've been here for many years. I consider them to be almost natives of Montauk, although they're not. Although one of them is from East Hampton, and the girl is from like maybe forgetting if she was from Brooklyn or something like that. But been here a long time, and I'll have conversations with them, open conversations. But they're the only two, and they think that they were at some level involved in it too. But besides that, it's just tourists talk about it because they read the book or they saw the TV show Stranger Things, and they're curious to see what kind of connection. And I don't really talk to too many people about it because it's just exhausting.
Yeah.
And then when you start talking about it, they don't even know what to make of it. So they want to change the conversation because then they're kind of like almost like it's almost like they feel like they're bored by the conversation. Like it's so out there that they you know they just want to have fun. They don't want to talk about anything negative. I don't blame them. They're out here on vacation. They just want to like they want to hear the sci-fi fun stuff, but they don't want to hear the truth about how that in my mind how that TV show was actually made, and it wasn't. You know, I don't blame the producers or the writers, but it's not exactly nice. But um, but they glamorize
Yes.
horrible things. So
And have
anyway,
you been believed by people close to you, family, friends, people in your circle? Have you had luck with people supporting you on whistleblowing and sharing and being open about this?
over the years, people have tracked me down, called me and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
found me on Facebook or whatever, written to me and talked to me. And so typically it's been positive of nobody, I haven't had anybody like write to me on Facebook and say you're crazy or this didn't happen or you're making it up or whatever. So I've never written a book. I've never seen profit from from my testimony or anything like that. So they can't accuse me of doing it for financial reasons because that's never ever happened. Um, so yeah, I think that I've had friends say, you imagine things. I've had other people say that they believe me 100%. And I don't blame people for saying it could be in your imagination, but they're not me, and they don't. Just like I was recalling with you the events, their body doesn't, just because I'm telling them the story, their body and their mind doesn't go through the events in the same way that my body and my brain are reacting to it. So where I feel it's real that it happened, that these events that I'm talking about happened, they only have words coming out of my mouth, so they don't feel what I'm feeling. So I don't blame them. I'm not like criticizing my friends or thinking that it's not real or thinking that it's in my imagination. That's their coping mechanism on how they deal with it because maybe they can't in their minds deal with with a reality that's so scary that there are people like this. Maybe they physically and mentally can't handle it,
Yeah.
and they don't want to live in fear, thinking that things like this actually happen And not that they're just happening. I think that things happen to adults, but this is happening to little kids. We're like the most innocent. We children are. I'm saying it because I'm speaking as if I'm still a little kid because we just spoke about this and I'm still feeling like I'm there right now. We're like the most innocent, most vulnerable. We don't hurt anybody. As a little kid, if I do something, it's not out of like greed or or vengeance or anything like that. It's just because I make a mistake. You know, you do stupid things when you're a kid, you're having fun. But we don't go out there to fight. You never to fight with other little kids and start wars and all this other bullshit. We don't do any of that stuff. That's adults do that, not little kids. Why are you screwing with us? But again, maybe there's a like I said before, maybe they were doing it because they needed to. Maybe there was no other way to harness the energies they needed for this equipment or whatever they were using our energies for. That maybe it's for a greater good and we're just the sacrificial lambs. I don't know. I don't know.
And this might be a stupid question just because I have not done any research about it, but I was just thinking about it. Are there official records that exist about the decommissioning of the Montauk Air Force Base that you've come across?
No, I don't know. I mean, yeah, there is. I mean, they just I've never seen any paperwork, but over the years, working for the parks as long as I did, they just heard that it was they just got out of there. They left.
Okay.
There was no read for there was according I guess to official records there was no need for it anymore. That type of radar, that dish was obsolete. They have other technologies with satellites and other things that they use now. They don't need that dish anymore. It's actually the last of its kind in the United States. There is no more. Once that dish falls, it's fallen into the ground. um, it's sort of rust and rot and the tower's falling apart. Once it finally just falls down, you'll never see another one. So that's the last of the radar dishes of its kind. And so that's what it was. They just didn't need it anymore. That's the official story of why they left. Now, in the book, I think they talk about this creature, which I may have seen, that 9 footer, if that's what it was. They called it Junior. They say that they ran in terror because they had unleashed this creature. That's what they talk about in the book. But I don't know actually why they left. I mean, supposedly when they decommissioned that base, they left the desks and the telephones operational and literally pencils and paper on the desks and like everything was perfect. They left it pristine. They swept the place supposedly. It was perfect. And then for a few years they had like so I guess security rolling through there and maybe even local law enforcement. I don't know, just checking up on the place because they didn't know if they'd be coming back. Like the government doesn't know what the hell it's doing half the time. When they leave a facility, they think they're not going to use it, then they come back and they use it again. So that's probably what happened, but they just never came back. Once the military left, that was one of the bases that they actually just left. And eventually, as far as I know, GSA, Government Services Administration, they took it over. It sat derelict for a long time, and then eventually the Parks Department took it over, and then in 2002, I believe it was 2002, the year that I started working there, maybe 6 months or so after I started working there, we opened it up to the general public to use the base as a park, and we to this day we maintain it as a state park, and it's a beautiful place. Really, I'm actually very proud of that location that I worked at because I could point out all the things in 20 years that I made happen that I did to that place to make people's visit there safer and more enjoyable. And yeah, so I love that park. It's my favorite place to go to this day. I should start going out there more and doing more hikes and the trails that I made. So anyway, uh, probably straight off of the question that you had asked me, but just rambling.
Oh yeah, I was talking about the decommissioning. I didn't know if there was, that's really interesting that they just up and left. That's what I was
Yeah, but
curious
they do
about.
that. How are you supposed to leave? You got to go sooner or later. I mean, I'm sure they planned it out, or I think they probably when they close bases, they plan it out probably years or at least months in advance, and how many personnel are going to be left at the end, and then everybody just kind of like leaves. Whether they ran out of there in fear, like in the book, I don't know if that happened or not. But as far as I know, talking to people over the years, they left in an orderly manner, left everything the way it was they were supposed to leave it intact, and nothing. They didn't run out of there in fear. They just left because they were supposed to. Time was up, and they just got out of there. So that was, I don't think that there was anything. My gut feeling tells me there was nothing nefarious about it. And I think by the time they left, the project that I was involved with, if indeed I was involved, was probably long over. And I don't know that the people ask about the tower. Oh, was the tower transmitting? Was that part of the? I don't know if the tower was even used in the stuff. From what I know, from the stuff that I was involved in, I don't. The tower had nothing to do with us with the kids underground or any of that stuff. I don't think it had. I think that was just the tower was a totally different thing as far as I could think of. There was two things going on: the surface stuff and then the underground stuff.
How many
So
floors do you remember underground? I know you said you had thrown the rock and you couldn't hear it land. Do you recall through your memories, how many floors you did see, how many levels that went down?
um, in the deprogramming that the hypnosis that I went under, like I say, I was looking down from the observation
Mm-hmm.
probably 3 to 4 floors down because there was like a 25-foot ceiling. I didn't have a measuring tape, maybe 30 feet tall ceiling. So if each floor is 8 to 9 feet, we're talking it was if it was 3 floors lower than where I was looking at, we're talking 30 feet. So I'm thinking 30, maybe if it was 3 floors lower than me, it was 3 floors stacked, that's 30 feet. So let's go 30 feet. That's what I saw. 3 floors down.
Yeah.
And I assume, and I don't know, but there had to be a way to get to that lower level. They weren't going down a stairway, not from the observation. So they had to go down stairs or an elevator to take them down to that lower floor at the bottom of that 30 feet. So there's 3 levels right there. I've heard that there was that at the height of the project that there was 8 levels down. So and I mean it is really high up on the cliffs. I don't know what the elevation is there, but you could probably do 8 levels without hitting seawater, maybe even deeper.
Oh my goodness. And
So
for you,
and we're
how old
pretty.
were you when this stopped or when you weren't being used anymore?
I think it started. I think I was only 2 summers out there. Probably.
Mm.
I'm thinking 1980 and 1981.
Okay.
I don't think it went after that. I mean, they could have used us remotely, but I think I was actually on the base only those 2 summers.
Was there
They could have
anything
used.
else weird that happened to you after 81 until, you were an adult and experienced these other sort of paranormal things while you were working at the park and the different things that you heard? Or was life
Um,
like pretty normal?
like you mean growing up over the years?
Yeah, did
Well,
you did you have any weird experiences that you can recall where you're like, I wonder if that was related to what I went through as a child, or did everything just stop? And then once you started working at the park, you started seeing, the beings and started hearing people talk about weird things and that they've experienced. Did you have anything else weird between then?
I every once in a while I wake up and I see or feel there's ghosts. I mean, I believe in spirits. I could talk more about that for a few minutes here if you want me to.
Sure.
And I spoke to a woman years ago, and it wasn't a regression or anything. She was just asking me. She's a religious lady, and she has a podcast, and I was on that. So when I was about 10 years old, I drowned in a swimming pool, and I was in Florida. All of us were swimming at this little girl's house. Her name was Emily. Her mom, I think, was home, but the rest of it was like maybe like 5 kids were there. And the last thing I remember was we were all swimming in the pool, And I think that I was the only one that we all got out of the pool eating sandwiches or something. And I decided to go down into the swimming pool to get a golf ball or something. There was like hula hoops that you were supposed to swim through the hula hoops. It was like a fun game, you could swim through the hula hoops fast enough. They were sunken at the bottom of the pool. I must have gotten tangled up in one of the hula hoops. There was a golf ball down there. I remember trying to retrieve it, but I must have taken a gulp of water and passed out at the bottom of the pool. So um, this guy Dougie, the local kid, I think he was maybe a year older than me. He came. I don't remember him pulling me out, but as the story goes, he pulls me out of the pool and lays me on the ground, my head towards, I remember this part. So my head was towards the exit door of the pool. It was like in a big enclosure and there was like a screen door. And he laid me down there. And the only reason I know that that's the way he laid me down was because the next thing I remember was them screaming, Joe's dead, Joe's dead, go get help. All these kids are screaming, go get help, go get the nurse, Joe's dead. Lucky for us, in the neighborhood, we had this nurse. She was only, I don't know how many blocks, but she was a couple streets over and down the road. Maybe if you ran real fast, you could probably make it there in about 5 minutes, if you ran to her house really quickly and on foot as a little kid. So I remember hearing this Joe's dead, Joe's dead. I didn't know that I was Joe. I was like 10 years old and I was in such a blur. I had left my body. I was in spirit form and I'm hearing them screaming, Joe's dead. And I said, I'll go get help. And I remember running there, getting to her house, banging on the door, but I can't hear my fist banging. And I'm yelling, "Joe's dead! And we need help! And Joe, we need help! Come! Joe's at Emily's pool. We need help!" And I could hear her moving around the kitchen. There was these, I don't know if you know what jealousy windows are. There's like slats of glass, and they used to, she had an old house and slats of glass where the windows, and you unfold them, they're like blinds almost when you roll them out. So you could hear everything through them on both sides. There was very no insulation really. So I could hear her through the glass, even though the glass windows were closed. I could hear her through these jealousy glass panels, and I could hear her putting away like silverware on the dish drain and everything. But she can't hear me screaming, and not for the life of me, I can't understand her. How come she can't hear me? A couple minutes later, Dougie comes running up. I thought it was Christy. My sister eventually told me it was me that ran up to help, but it was Doug, as far as I remembered, it was Dougie and Christy. Christy was younger, was really young. Dougie was maybe 11 years old. Christy was probably about 9 years old. They come running up, and I'm yelling. She can't hear me. I'm yelling. I can't. And all they did was bang on the door one time. She came right to the door. They said the same thing as me. Joe's dead. Joe needs help. Joe's dead. He drowned. And and they all go run. Oh my God. Instead of just jumping in her station wagon or whatever she had, she panicked too, the nurse. And so they all go running. And I ran the fastest of them all because I had no legs. I was in spirit form. And I remember this very consciously, very vividly. How, my God, this is awesome. I can't believe I'm running so fast. I'm running so fast, my feet aren't even on the ground. And I don't know if you know what a terrazzo road, I think it was terrazzo. It was all these little rocks stuck into like concrete. Back then, they were really old roads. This is down in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And when you run on this road, mostly barefoot, your feet are in pain. You're hurting. I felt nothing. I got back to the swimming pool and I'm looking at this person, which I still at this point don't recognize as being me, laying on the ground, and I see my own face and I still don't realize it's me. And I'm waiting for them to come, for Christy and Dougie and the nurse to catch up to me because I ran so fast. And they finally get there, and I'm saying, "He's here!" Whatever. I'm yelling, "He's here! This is Joe! Help Joe!" And and I still thought at that point that I don't even know who the hell I was. I knew who I was, but I didn't realize that I was dead. That physically body was dead, and that was me laying there. And then I just remember a bunch of people like over me, like they shadowed my corpse, my dead body. And then the next thing I remember is waking up in darkness, seeing lights flashing blue and reds. And I was laying in like back then we had station wagon ambulances, like Ghostbusters, but a little bit newer. And this is like 70s, early 70s, mid 70s. So I remember the Ghostbuster type of an ambulance, and I'm laying on the back and on my back, and I look and I'm like out of it. I can't. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I just remember looking at red and blue lights flashing, and then the next memory was waking up in the hospital in the bed naked, and my dad screaming, "Let's get the hell out of here! They're going to charge us for the night." He was so cheap. He didn't even want me to be diagnosed. I said, "But Dad, what happened?" He said, "You idiot! You dummy! You drowned. What a stupid boy! You drowned. We got to get the hell out of here. We can't stay the night." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Where's your clothes?" And I said, "I have no clothes. I was in my bathing suit. I'm looking. I got no clothes on. It was under the sheet." He literally picked me up, my dad. He wrapped me in the sheet and literally carried me out of the hospital, threw me in the pickup truck, the front seat of the pickup truck, and the nurses are yelling, "You can't take him. Where he's under observation. He just died. He just drowned." And my father said, "I'm not paying the bill for him staying overnight. This is my son. I'm taking him." And then my father's like arguing as he's running literally through the hallway hospital to the hospital. And that's when and then I went home. And so anyway, I remember being my point is why I started talking about this was I remember being a spirit. I remember leaving my body. I know for 100% sure that there is life after death. There is consciousness after death. If that's any consolation to people that may doubt it, I'm a witness to it. Physically happened to me. I don't know what happens afterwards. I never saw the light, the tunnel. I never saw any dead people there with me. I never saw any loved ones or anything like that. Maybe I wasn't dead long enough. Maybe my spirit wasn't meant to go. But that's basically what happened to me.
Wow.
And I think because that did happen to me, I think that when that happens to somebody, and I was down, by the way, I years later I went back and I recalled all, I recall it just like I do now. And I thought to myself, I wonder how long I was dead for. And I physically ran that from that screen patio, from that well, and going to the property years later. Christy had, doggy Christy had moved, Emily had moved, everybody was gone. So I just ran from like her driveway back to where I knew the nurse's house was, and then back how long it would have taken me to do all of that. And I don't know how long I was down, but I estimate I was probably about 20 minutes had gone by. So I feel like I was dead for about 20 minutes. Um, at least I was stopped breathing for about 20 minutes. So by all rights, I should be dead right now. I shouldn't have any brain activity. I should be either in coma from a little kid, having my brain was cut off oxygen for so long. As far as I know, I'm just a normal functioning human being. So I was talking about ghosts. So I think because of what happened to me, I think that the other side, the ghost realm, the spirit realm, still has a way to connect with me. And at night, sometimes, and this has happened not just with me, when I'm in bed with girlfriends in the past, we've had sheets pulled off of us. But and I've been accused, "Oh, stop pulling the sheets off of me." And the sheets are being pulled not from me. They might be pulled in my direction, but they're not being pulled by me. And I'm yelling, "Stop pulling the sheets off of me." But I'm like, "Wait a second, where are you?" This happened. I was living in Springs in East Hampton as part of East Hampton with this girl this one summer back in the early 90s. And I touched her, with like put my hand like this next to her. And I said, "Well, wait a second. What side of the bed are you on?" And the sheets, as I'm having this conversation, most of us are totally awake. She said, "I'm over here." And then she grabbed my hand as my hand is like on her leg. And I said, "The sheets are being pulled for, oh my gosh, it's happening." And I said, "It has to be one of the cats." She had these two cats, Bacchus and Mariah. I said, "It's got to be Mariah or Box. Cats have got to be pulling the sheets. They got to be under the bed." She goes, "Bacchus and Mariah, they're outside of the door. They're not in the room with us. They're outside. I locked them out, They're not in the room with us." And as we're having this totally conscious conversation, the sheets are still being pulled off of my side. I'm fighting the sheets. She's fighting we're both of us with our strength are trying to fight the sheets against something that was pulling the sheets from under the bed. So immediately she gets up, she turns the light on. I jump off the bed, I roll off the bed, and I look under the bed, and I'm thinking I'm going to find the cats. There's nothing under the bed, not even a pair of shoes. Nothing's there. Bed's up high. See totally straight through. She turns on the light. and she opens up the door. Both cats are sitting right outside of that door. We saw both of them. There was nothing in that room that could be causing those sheets to be pulled off of that side of the bed, but yet we were both fighting the sheets, and and it was the only thing I could think of is ghost, some type of spirit, something invisible was in that room with us. It happened another time with another girlfriend down in Florida when I was living down there. Same similar type of situation. We both woke up. I had pulled my bicep. Something had got, and I warned her. I said, "Listen, I said, if you stay over, you're gonna have to be be aware that something might happen. If you There's the very first time this girl stayed over, and she used to live downstairs from me, and they believe in this type of stuff." And I said, "Okay, fair warning. It's been happening a lot lately." And sure enough, we went to sleep. Neither of us remember anything except for until we woke up, deep, deep sleep. We discussed it the next morning. My bicep was pulled, and she was also like, she felt like she was fighting. I don't think she was injured. I remember her being injured, but she said, "I was fighting all night long. Something was in the room with us, and I was fighting them. I was protecting you, and you were fighting them." And I looked, and at that point, I felt my arm, my bicep was just in so much pain. And she said something was in this room, and I looked at the door because my bed was literally really right next to a padlocked door that leads to the outside, and the padlock was on, the chain was on, the door was locked. There was nobody came through that door, not like physical like we are, because that there was nobody that had a key to it. I changed the lock when I moved into that apartment. Nobody got into there, and plus the chain was on it, so there's just no way. And I said, "Something came into this room." I said, "I'm sorry about this. This has happened before to me, and I didn't think that they would attack you. I thought that you might see something in the middle of the night, wake up and see a shadow. But I didn't know that you'd be attacked." And she said, "I was fighting all night long with them. I don't know what it was." She said, "But I'll never ever stay with you ever again." And sure enough, she never did. She refused to stay in that apartment with me. So and over the years, yeah, these things have happened where the sheets are being pulled, or something grabs my feet and it wakes me up, or I literally some nights I'm so tired of fighting these damn things that I'm sleeping and I wake up and they're pulling on my sheets, or they're pulling on my foot, or they're hitting my foot, like grabbing my foot, and I just kind of like kick them away from me, and I go back to sleep because at first it startles me, but after a while, you just get so tired of it that it's just like, oh, whatever, you're gonna grab my feet, whatever. I'm gonna sleep right through it, and I just fall asleep. So if you ask me if any other strange things have happened to me, yes, that's the answer. I believe there are spirits that interact with me, and if they're interacting with me, I believe they interact with other people too, because I've heard of all kinds of stories about it. So um, now it's usually like a weekly occurrence. Sometimes it doesn't happen for a couple of years, but right now it's happening. Um,
Wow.
Probably last time it happened was maybe a week ago. I'm thinking now. Um, wasn't too violent, but maybe through the summer, a few months ago, it was happening every single night, night after night. And I sleep with my light on in my bedroom because I feel like I don't think that that's healthy. I think you need darkness, but I feel like if the light is on in the bedroom, when I open my eyes, I feel more secure. Even if they pull on me, at least I could look and I could see if something physically is there. Because with the light off, when I wake up and that happens, I'm very, very afraid. And then it's very difficult for me to go back to sleep. But with the light on, at least I could fall back asleep because I feel like at least physically I can't see anything.
Yeah.
And I sleep with the closet open too because I feel like something could be in there too. I know it sounds like a childish thing to do because I'm a grown adult, but when you have experiences, you have to find a way to survive to cope with those experiences.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And honestly, I don't think that has anything to do at all with all the crap that happened out at the base. I think that this is totally separate from that. So yeah, I do believe that ghosts exist because I was one when I was a little kid. just lucky enough to have come back. So,
We're very
uh,
lucky to have you back. And this has been just an incredible conversation. And you're very fascinating. It's amazing how strong you are through this, and to see how functional you've been as an adult. I know that's going to give people hope too that, that are really suffering, remembering and, coming to terms with what they went through right now. You've had a lot of time to process this, and I know it's not that it gets easy or it fully heals and that it's just all magically better. But to see how far you've come, and how you've been able to manage so much in your life, including having a family, and carrying out all these different jobs and finding things that you enjoy. I know that's going to give people hope who are feeling like that's just not possible for them, and your story really does. It answers a lot of questions, I think, and helps give insight from the inside, and then also what you've seen working and living in these different areas that are very mysterious to people, and it's fascinating to learn about the culture there and how people are that live there and, kind of the lore around it and what you've learned and seen. And just very grateful. And is there anything else from your story that you can think of that you wanted to share about childhood, about adulthood, anything else that we didn't touch on today?
no, I think I've probably covered enough. I'm kind of I'm actually really worn out right now, just discussing everything. Anyway,
A lot of
so probably going
information.
to take me a few hours to wind down and get back to like normal frame of mind because it's a lot to recall, and where it's exhausting. So
Absolutely. Yes.
anyway, but I'm glad you had me on your podcast, and our mutual friend had told me to reached out to me and reached out to you and asked me if I wanted to be on your podcast, and so I'm glad she did that because I know she's a survivor of not the same type of um, situation, but it's she went through a lot too, and she's very lucky to be still here, with us too, because she could have been killed a long time ago.
Yep.
Um, she made it through childhood into adulthood, and from what I know about her, she has a normal life. She has a normal, productive life. So anyway, it just seems like sometimes victims find each other, even though we're not looking for each other. We just kind of like it's fate, I guess. You just kind of like run into people you're supposed to run into at certain times in your life to be there for you to be strength for them or for them to be strength for you or for you or vice versa. So I think everything happens for a reason. So predetermined anyway. So try to like think that we're so much in control of our destiny, and I think it's already been written a long time ago. So anyway, nothing to fear but fear itself, right? You gotta keep just pushing forward and getting on with things and being productive member of society. So anyway,
Amen.
anyway,
Yes.
I'm so what?
Like I said, I'm just really grateful that, you were able to come on and share your story. You're welcome on again anytime you want. Maybe too, if people have questions, they can leave them below. And I can either, send those to you and you can kind of look at them. Or we could do kind of a Q&A episode at some point in the future and, see what else people want to know that maybe you can help them with. But in the meantime, really grateful that you shared everything that you did. I know that this is exhausting and difficult and, it's an honor. I know you haven't done a podcast in a long time, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for choosing this one in 2025 to come on and share your story. And I ask everybody to pray over you and to, just ask that you continue to have the courage that you do, the safety, protection, and passion that you do for the things that you love doing. It's wonderful to see you finding these different hobbies that you love and that you still are in love with where you live despite what happened to you there. And, I ask for just prayers over you and just continued protection and, to see where God takes you on this journey if there's more for you. And I think there is. I think that your story is really important and that more people need to pay attention to you. And I hope you still keep speaking out here and there because what you have to say is important and a lot of people believe you now. So thank you, Joe, for
Well,
coming on today and for sharing.
I may say one more thing, and please pray for the children that aren't here with us now that how that were taken and that were abused, maybe not just in this project, just by evil people that are in the world, and maybe there are other projects going on, and they're dead now, and just pray for their souls and help the survivors. Because if someone tells you something that they were a victim of something, just try to give them the benefit of the doubt instead of just calling them crazy right away and saying that it didn't happen and it's in your mind and all this other nonsense. They're just lucky that nothing happened to them, that they were able to pass such judgments on us. All right, I'm done. Thank you. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Amen. And it was wonderful speaking with you too. And thank you for that closing thought. I couldn't agree more. And so, for everybody listening, I'll have all my contact info in the show notes. Follow me wherever you guys can. My email is below as well if you guys want to connect with me. I love hearing from you guys, and we couldn't do this without you. This show wouldn't exist without you. These voices wouldn't be heard without you guys caring. So, please share this episode on your own social media or in any way that you can to help get the word out, support on different platforms if you're able to, and just keep being a champion for all these amazing warriors that have such bravery and courage to come share what they went through with us. So, you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.